Welcome to Mystic Bedtime Stories, where ancient wisdom meets the gentle embrace of sleep. I'm here to guide you on a journey through time and legend, to places where gods walked among mortals and the very fabric of reality was woven from dreams and starlight. Tonight, we travel north, far beyond the reach of familiar shores, to the land of ice and fire, where the Norse people looked up at the endless sky and saw not emptiness, but a vast tree whose branches held all the worlds that ever were or ever could be. Close your eyes now and let your breathing slow. Feel the weight of your body settling into comfort, every muscle releasing its hold on the day. Tonight, you need do nothing but listen and drift and dream. Let my voice be your compass as we sail beyond the edge of the known world, where aurora dances across winter skies and ancient stories wait to unfold like flowers blooming in moonlight. In the beginning, there was no sun, no stars, no sky above, no soil, no sea, no world below. Only the vast emptiness of Ginnungagap, the yawning void where nothing stirred, and yet everything waited. Picture this primordial silence, this space before space, deeper than the deepest ocean, wider than the widest plain. Here was potential itself, pregnant with possibility, breathing softly in the darkness between what was not yet and what would one day be. To the south lay Muspelheim, the realm of eternal fire, its flames raging without form, without limit. Imagine waves of golden heat rolling endlessly through nothingness, sparks dancing like fireflies in an endless summer night, warmth that had no source and needed none. This was fire in its purest essence, not destruction, but creation's first heartbeat, life's initial spark waiting to kindle worlds. To the north spread Niflheim, the world of ice and mist, where rivers of venom flowed beneath sheets of eternal frost. Feel the crystalline silence of this realm, where breath itself would freeze and fall like silver bells to the ground. Here was cold, that cut deeper than any blade, yet held within its heart the promise of preservation, of memory held forever in perfect stillness. Between them stretched the chasm, silent and deep. But when the breath of fire met the breath of frost, the void quickened, like the first drops of spring rain kissing winter's last snow. Like dawn's warmth touching the surface of a frozen lake, these two forces merged in a dance as old as time itself. Drops of melting ice formed the first giant, Ymir, whose body carried the raw power of creation within its massive frame. Beside him came the cow Audtumla, gentle and nourishing, from whose milk he drank, and from whose patient licking of salty stone emerged the first of the gods. Thus the cosmos awoke, born not of harmony, but of tension, fire against ice, order against chaos, destiny already written in the clash of opposites. Feel this moment of awakening when the universe first opened its eyes and gazed upon itself in wonder. In this tension lived all the stories that would ever be told, all the heroes who would ever rise, all the loves that would ever bloom, and all the sorrows that would ever fall, like autumn leaves upon the earth. And in this new world, the gods would rise to carve realms from ruin. They would shape the earth with their mighty hands, raise the sky like a great tent above the land, and set the sun and moon to their eternal courses. They would weave fate into every life, from the smallest leaf trembling on the branches of Yggdrasil to the golden halls of shining Asgard where heroes feast forever. For the Norse, the cosmos was alive. Every river ran with memory, carrying stories in its current from mountain peak to distant sea. Every stone echoed with ancient song, holding in its silent heart the whispers of giants and the footsteps of gods. Every breath of wind carried voices from across the 9 worlds, tales of what had been, what was, and what must come again in the turning of the great wheel. Here, in the northern twilight where summer nights stretch endless and winter days fade before they fully wake, heroes are born under stars that remember their names. Gods are tested by fates they cannot escape, and even the end of all things, Ragnarok itself, is but another turning of the eternal wheel, another breath in the endless sleeping and waking of worlds. Tonight, let yourself become part of this ancient story. Feel the aurora painting colors across your dreams, hear the distant sound of waves against shores of black sand, breathe the crisp air that carries the scent of pine forests and distant snow. You are safe here, held gently in the embrace of stories older than memory, rocked by the rhythm of mythic time where every ending is also a beginning, and every sleep leads to a new awakening. Let your mind drift now like a ship with silver sails, carried by currents of dream toward shores you have never seen but somehow recognize. The ancient storytellers are gathering around their fires, their voices rising and falling like the tide, weaving tales that will carry you gently into the realm of sleep, where all stories are true and all dreams are possible. The journey begins now, in the space between one breath and the next, in the moment when consciousness softens and the borders between waking and dreaming begin to blur. Here, where Ginnungagap once yawned empty and waiting, we will build new worlds from the substance of story, and you will walk among gods and giants, heroes and wise women, in the timeless realm where Norse mythology lives eternal, beautiful, and forever young. Rest now, and let the first story unfold like morning mist rising from a still lake, gentle and inevitable as the turning of seasons, ancient as the roots of Yggdrasil itself. In the beginning, there was nothing. No land stretched beneath wandering feet, no sea rolled with silver waves, no sky arched overhead, painted with clouds and starlight. Only the endless gap, a yawning emptiness, a silence that stretched beyond all imagining. The Norse called it Ginnungagap, the great gaping void, and in this nothingness lay the seed of everything that would ever be. Feel this emptiness now, not as absence, but as infinite possibility. Like the moment before dawn when darkness holds its breath, like the pause between heartbeats when time itself seems to wait, Ginnungagap was pregnant with potential. Here was space before space existed. Time before time began its ancient dance, a canvas waiting for the first brushstroke of creation. To the north of this void lay Niflheim, a land of biting frost and eternal shadow. Picture this realm of primordial cold, where rivers poured out their burden of venom and ice, where mists curled thick across the darkness like the breath of sleeping giants. The winds of Niflheim howled with voices of sorrow, carrying in their icy embrace the memory of winters that had never known spring, of nights that had never glimpsed the dawn. This was cold in its purest form, not the absence of warmth, but the presence of something deeper, older, more fundamental than comfort or pain. To the south burned Muspelheim, a realm of flame and living fire, where sparks leapt into the void like golden fish swimming through an ocean of darkness. Here, heat pulsed like the breath of a titan dreaming in molten sleep. Light had not yet become the sun, but burned fiercely, shapeless, unbound, a sea of flame that needed no fuel and knew no end. Feel the warmth of this primordial fire, not the harsh burn of destruction, but the gentle glow of creation's first impulse, life's original spark waiting to kindle worlds beyond counting. And between them stretched Ginnungagap, neither light nor dark, neither hot nor cold, a place waiting to awaken. In this space between fire and frost, between being and not being, the universe held its breath and prepared for its first word, its first song, its first step into the dance of existence. When the fire of Muspelheim met the frost of Niflheim, the void stirred. Imagine this moment when opposites touched for the first time and discovered they were part of a greater whole. The meeting was not violent, but tender, like lovers' hands touching in the darkness, like spring rain falling on winter's last snow. Frost melted into drops of water, each droplet catching light and shadow, holding within its crystalline heart the essence of both flame and ice. And from those drops, life began. First came the giant Ymir, a being vast and powerful beyond mortal comprehension, born of ice and fire, carrying within his enormous frame the raw chaos of both elements. Picture him stirring to consciousness in that primordial dawn, his breath creating the first winds, his heartbeat the first rhythm in a universe learning to dance. From his massive body flowed children, giants like himself, vast in strength, fearsome in their primal hunger, beings of pure elemental force who knew no law save the wild impulse of creation itself. And with Ymir came the great cow Audhumla, born from the same melting ice, gentle where the giant was fierce, nourishing where he was consuming. See her moving through the void with calm majesty, her milk flowing like rivers of starlight to feed the newborn giant, sustaining him as he roamed the spaces between worlds. Her presence brought the first hint of nurturing to a cosmos born of clash and conflict, the first suggestion that creation could be as tender as it was terrible. From her tongue, licking the salty blocks of ice with patient devotion, emerged another wonder. Slowly, lovingly, she uncovered the form of Buri, the first of the gods, his features emerging from the ice like sculpture revealed by an artist's careful hand. From Buri's divine line would come Odin, the Allfather, and with Odin would come the shaping of worlds, the crafting of order from the beautiful chaos of beginning. But in those early days, chaos ruled with wild abandon. Ymir's children spread through the void like seeds scattered by an autumn wind. His sons and daughters filling Ginnungagap with their untamed energy. The frost giants stirred in their newborn strength, powerful and unyielding as winter storms, a force that no god could yet restrain or gentle. They were the first children of creation, raw and unrefined as molten gold, beautiful in their terrible vitality. Feel the tension building in these early moments, like a song approaching its crescendo, like a storm gathering on the horizon. The universe was pregnant with conflict, heavy with the weight of destiny yet to unfold. Order and chaos danced their first dance, neither yet knowing which would lead and which would follow. It was then that Odin, son of Buri's line, along with his brothers Vili and Ve, rose against Ymir in the cosmic battle that would shape all things to come. The battle shook the void itself, each clash of divine will against primal chaos, sending ripples through the fabric of existence. Fire met ice, order challenged wildness, and the future of all worlds hung in the balance like a star trembling on the edge of birth. In the end, through struggle beyond imagining, Ymir fell. But this was not destruction. This was transformation. From the giant's vast body, the brothers shaped the cosmos with the patience of master craftsmen and the vision of dreaming gods. His flesh, still warm with the memory of life, became the earth beneath our feet, solid and nurturing, ready to bear forests and flowers, cities and kingdoms. His blood spilled out as seas and rivers, carrying within its flow the salt of tears and the sweetness of rain, connecting every shore to every other shore in an endless circulation of life. His bones, strong as they had been in life, stood tall as mountains, reaching toward the sky like prayers carved in stone, holding up the heavens and giving shape to the horizon. His hair spread across the land as forests, each strand becoming a tree, each tree a world unto itself, home to countless creatures who would never know they dwelt in the transformed body of the first giant. His skull, vast beyond measure, was lifted high to form the sky itself, and beneath its protective dome the brothers set 4 dwarves to hold its corners steady. North, south, east, and west, the first guardians of direction and purpose. From Ymir's brain, they scattered the clouds, white and gray and silver, forever drifting across the sky like thoughts in the mind of the cosmos. From his fiery sparks, caught and held like fireflies in amber, they kindled the stars, each one a distant sun burning with the memory of creation's first flame. The world had taken form, not from nothing, but from sacrifice. Chaos was not destroyed but transformed, and from its willing transformation came order, beauty, purpose. Every mountain held within its heart the strength of the fallen giant. Every sea carried his blood in its tides. Every star burned with his fire, and every cloud drifted with the substance of his dreams. Yet still the cosmos was not complete. The world was beautiful, but empty, shaped but waiting for those who would walk its paths and call it home. So Odin and his brothers wandered the shores of this new world, their footsteps the first to mark its beaches, their breath the first wind to stir its forests. There, on a beach where waves whispered their first songs to sand, they found 2 pieces of driftwood, shapeless and lifeless, cast up by the tide like gifts from the sea. In these simple remnants of tree and time, the gods saw possibility. From these humble beginnings they would craft the first humans, breathing into dead wood the spark of consciousness, the gift of choice, the burden and blessing of mortality. Odin breathed into them the gift of spirit, the divine spark that would allow them to dream, to hope, to reach beyond themselves towards something greater. Vili gave them thought and movement, the ability to reason and to run, to ponder the stars and to dance beneath their light. Ve granted them form and speech, shaping their bodies to match their spirits and giving them voices to sing, to weep, to call each other's names across the vastness of the world. And so Ask and Embla awoke, the first man and the first woman, opening their eyes to a world that had never known human laughter or human tears. They would dwell in Midgard, the realm of humankind, protected by the gods who made them, yet forever bound to fate's inexorable weaving, forever walking the path between order and chaos, between the divine and the mortal. Above Midgard, the gods built Asgard, their home shining and high, a fortress of gold and crystal where divine light never faded and divine song never ceased. Here would be their refuge and their stronghold, connected to the world below by the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, spanning the gap between mortal and immortal like hope itself made visible. And far below both realms stretched Helheim, realm of the dead, cold and silent, where souls went when life was done and breath returned to the wind. Here was not punishment, but rest, not ending, but transformation. The final shore where all journeys ultimately led, ruled by Hel, half living and half dead, as beautiful as summer and as terrible as winter's last night. Thus, the 9 worlds were set in their places, woven together by the roots and branches of the great ash tree Yggdrasil. the world tree that would become the axis around which all existence turned. Its crown touched the highest heavens, where eagles soared in endless circles, while its roots drank deep from shadows and springs older than memory itself. Picture this mighty tree, its trunk so vast that it would take a mortal lifetime to walk around it, its branches so numerous that they held up the sky itself. From its heights flew eagles, their cries echoing across all the worlds, while at its base the dragon Nidhogg gnawed ceaselessly at its roots, neither destroying nor being destroyed, locked in eternal balance between creation and dissolution. Up and down its trunk scurried Ratatosk the squirrel, carrying bitter words between eagle above and dragon below, a messenger of discord whose very purpose seemed to be the stirring of strife. Around its base grazed 4 great stags, their antlers crowned with starlight, feeding on its leaves and carrying its essence to the 4 corners of existence. Deep among its roots lay wells of power and wisdom, the well of Urd, where the Norns wove fate itself, the well of Mimir, where Odin would one day trade his eye for a drink of wisdom, the spring Vergelmir, from which all rivers flowed. Here was the source of all stories, all songs, all dreams that would ever touch the hearts of gods or mortals. In Yggdrasil, all life was bound together in a web more intricate than any tapestry. Gods and giants, men and monsters, the living and the dead, all were tied to its branches, all drew sustenance from its roots, all danced to the rhythm of its rustling leaves. The tree was more than plant or symbol. It was existence itself made manifest, the living spine of creation, around which all worlds turned. And though the tree flourished in its cosmic garden, though its leaves sang with the voices of wind and its roots pulsed with the heartbeat of eternity, it also trembled. For in Norse understanding, nothing, not even the world tree itself, was eternal, even in its birth. The seeds of ending lay hidden like winter sleeping in autumn's heart. The Norns, those ancient weavers of destiny, spun their threads beside the tree's roots, their fingers never pausing, their eyes seeing past and future as one unbroken tapestry. They whispered of a day to come when even the gods themselves would fall, when fire and frost would once again meet and consume all things. That day would be called Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods, when the wheel of creation would turn full circle and begin again. But for now, in this first dawn of existence, the world was alive and newly made, filled with rivers singing their way to the sea, mountains lifting their peaks to catch the first light, forests spreading their arms wide to embrace the sky. Here was a realm for gods to rule with wisdom, for humans to walk with courage, and for stories to take root and grow as vast as the tree that held them all. This was the beginning, the awakening of the cosmos from its dreamless sleep, the first breath of creation expanding like ripples on a pond, the first shaping of worlds from the willing sacrifice of chaos, the first note in a song that would echo through eternity and into realms beyond the reach of time itself. And from here, like branches growing from the world tree's mighty trunk, the sagas of the North would unfold in all their glory and terror. Tales of wisdom hard won and love hard lost, of war that shook the foundations of existence and peace that lasted no longer than a summer's day. Stories of trickery and fate, of gods learning to be mortal and mortals reaching toward the divine, all woven into the branches of Yggdrasil, forever reaching toward light, forever trembling in the winds of destiny that blow from the shores of what was toward the undiscovered countries of what is yet to be. Let your mind drift now like a seed carried on the wind, floating gently toward the heart of all existence, toward the great ash tree that stands at the center of everything that is, was, or ever shall be. Yggdrasil, the world tree, rises from the deepest roots of being, its trunk so vast that all the armies of all the worlds could march around its base for 1,000 years and never complete their journey. Its branches stretch so wide that they cradle the very heavens, and its leaves whisper with the voices of every story ever told. Close your eyes and see it now, this tree beyond all trees, its bark smooth as silk, yet strong as the bones of mountains. Each groove in its surface tells a tale. Each knot holds a secret. Each branch supports not just leaves but entire realms where gods and giants, mortals and monsters live out their fated lives. This is no ordinary tree but the living spine of creation, the axis around which all worlds turn in their eternal dance. From Yggdrasil's mighty trunk grow 9 branches, and upon each branch rests a world complete unto itself, yet connected to all others through the tree's flowing sap, through the songs of wind in its leaves, through the deep underground network of roots that drink from springs of memory and possibility. These are the 9 realms of Norse cosmology, each one a jewel in the crown of existence, each one a note in the great symphony of being. High among the golden branches spreads Asgard, realm of the Aesir gods, where crystal halls catch starlight and hold it like cupped water. Here the air itself shimmers with divine essence, and every breath carries the scent of flowers that bloom in eternal spring. Golden-roofed Gladsheim stands here, Odin's mighty hall with its 540 doors, through which heroes march when the need for battle calls. Nearby rises Vingolf, the sacred sanctuary where goddesses gather to weave fate and wisdom into patterns more intricate than any mortal tapestry. Picture yourself walking these shining paths where every stone is polished to mirror brightness, where fountains sing with voices sweeter than any earthly choir. The very air in Asgard pulses with power, yet it is not the harsh power of storm or earthquake, but the gentle strength of summer rain, of moonlight on water, of a mother's hand smoothing a child's troubled dreams. Connected to Asgard by the Rainbow Bridge, Bifrost stretches Midgard, the middle realm, the home of humankind. See this bridge shimmering across the sky like aurora made solid, its colors shifting and flowing, red as roses, blue as deep ocean, green as spring forests, gold as harvest wheat. Heimdall stands guard at its head, his eyes so keen they can see a leaf fall in any of the 9 worlds, his ears so sharp they can hear grass growing in distant meadows. Below the bridge, Midgard spreads like a vast garden protected by a wall built from the eyebrows of the giant Ymir. Here rivers wind through valleys where wildflowers nod in gentle breezes, where wheat fields roll like golden seas beneath summer skies. This is the realm where human stories unfold, where love and loss, courage and fear, dreams and sorrows play out their eternal drama beneath stars that remember every prayer whispered to their light. Feel yourself walking through Midgard's peaceful meadows, hearing the laughter of children playing beside clear streams, the songs of workers in the fields, the evening conversations of families gathered around warm hearths. This is the world of mortal beauty, where every sunset is precious because it will not last forever, where every flower is cherished because spring does not endure, where every love burns brighter for its briefness. Beyond Midgard's protective wall lies Jotunheim, the realm of giants, where primordial forces still roam free and wild. This is a land of impossible geography, where mountains walk when they choose, where rivers flow uphill if the mood takes them, where forests grow with trees of ice and fire standing side by side in perfect contradiction. The giants who dwell here are not evil, but they are untamed, representing the wild chaos that existed before order learned to dance, the raw power that sleeps beneath civilization's careful constructions. In Jotunheim, storms are born and nurtured like children, growing strong on diets of thunder and lightning until they are ready to venture forth into other worlds. Here dwell the mountain giants and frost giants, the storm giants and the giants of deep earth, beings whose very breathing creates weather, whose footsteps cause avalanches, whose dreams reshape the landscape while they sleep. Yet, for all their power, there is something almost childlike about these giants, something innocent in their vast strength. They love deeply and hate completely. They laugh with the voice of thunder and weep with the passion of spring floods. They are forces of nature, given consciousness, weather patterns with hearts, the raw emotions of the cosmos walking upright beneath skies that change color with their moods. Deep beneath the earth, connected to Yggdrasil by roots that burrow through solid stone, lies Nidavellir, the realm of the dark elves or dwarves. Here in crystal caves and forges carved from living rock, the master craftsmen of the cosmos ply their trade. The ring of hammer on anvil echoes through tunnels that stretch to the heart of every mountain, and the glow of forge fires paints the cavern walls in shades of gold and copper, silver and deep red. These are no ordinary smiths, but artists whose materials are starlight and moonbeam, whose tools are shaped from crystallized time, whose creations possess powers that even gods marvel to behold. From their workshops come treasures beyond price. Thor's mighty hammer Mjolnir, that never misses its target. Odin's spear, Gungnir, that never fails to find its mark. The golden ring, Draupnir, that births 8 identical rings every 9th night. Picture these underground realms not as dark and frightening caves, but as galleries of wonder, where gems grow like flowers in carefully tended gardens, where rivers of liquid starlight flow through channels carved with geometric precision, where the very air sparkles with motes of precious metal floating like golden snow. The dark elves who work here are artists in the truest sense, creating not just objects but embodiments of concepts, making solid the abstract dreams of gods and mortals alike. High in the branches opposite Nidavellir lies Alfheim, realm of the light elves, beings of such pure beauty that mortal eyes can barely perceive them directly. They appear as shimmers in the air, as half-seen movements at the edge of vision, as the sense of being watched by loving eyes when walking alone in sacred groves. These elves are made of morning light and evening starshine, of the first ray of dawn and the last glow of sunset. Their realm is one of eternal twilight. Not the darkness before night, but the gentle dimming that comes when day softly releases its hold and evening spreads her silver wings across the sky. Here, fountains of liquid light flow between trees of crystallized music, and flowers bloom that smell like childhood memories and taste like half-forgotten dreams. The light elves are the poets and musicians of the cosmos, the keepers of beauty in its purest form. Their songs can heal the deepest wounds. Their dances can make the lame walk and the blind see. Their very presence brings peace to troubled hearts and hope to those who have forgotten how to dream. Far from these realms of craft and beauty stretches Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods, those deities of fertility and abundance, of the sea's wealth and the earth's generous giving. This is a land where everything grows in impossible profusion, where fruit trees bear year-round, where rivers run thick with fish and meadows burst with grain. The very soil here is black and rich as chocolate, and the rain that falls tastes of honey and wine. The Vanir gods who rule here are older than the Asir in some ways, more connected to the fundamental rhythms of life and death, growth and harvest, the tide's ebb and flow, the wheel of seasons turning in its eternal circle. They understand mysteries that even Odin seeks to learn, secrets of prosperity and increase, of love's deep magic and the earth's patient wisdom. After long war with the Aesir, peace was made between the two divine families, and now wisdom flows back and forth between Asgard and Vanaheim, like trade goods between allied kingdoms. Njordr of the Sea Winds dwells now in Asgard, while Hunir of the Aesir brings his keen judgment to Vanaheim's councils, and through this exchange, both realms grow richer and wiser. Cold beyond imagining lies Helheim, realm of the dead, where all souls journey when their time in Midgard is complete. This is not a place of punishment, but of rest, where the weariness of life finally lifts from tired shoulders, where pain and fear lose their power to hurt. The goddess Hel rules here, half beautiful as summer morning, half terrible as winter's darkest night, embodying the dual nature of death itself, loss and release, ending and transformation. Her hall stands vast and welcoming, with room for all who come seeking shelter from the storm of existence. Here dead heroes who did not die in battle find their peace. Here lovers separated by death are reunited beyond the reach of time. Here children who died too young grow to fullness in gardens where no shadow ever falls. The rivers of Helheim flow with memory rather than water, and their banks are lined not with reeds, but with the flowers of every spring that ever bloomed in Midgard. Here the dead dream dreams that heal all their mortal hurts and wake refreshed to days that have no ending. In a realm where winter never comes, but spring never fades. Finally, at the very roots of Yggdrasil, in chambers of fire deep beneath all other worlds, burns Muspelheim, the primordial realm of flame. Here dwell the fire giants led by Surtur, whose flaming sword will one day light the final battle of Ragnarok. But for now, in these early days of the cosmos, Muspelheim is the forge where new possibilities are born, the crucible where elements merge and separate in endless experimentation. The fires here are not destructive, but creative, burning with colors that have no names in mortal tongues, casting shadows that dance with lives of their own. This is the realm where stars learn to shine, where the sun and moon first ignited their celestial flames, where the raw energy of creation bubbles up from springs deeper than thought, older than time. All these 9 realms hang from Yggdrasil's mighty branches, or nestle among its roots, each one perfect in its own nature, each one necessary to the great pattern of existence. The world tree connects them all through its flowing sap, through the creatures that travel its trunk and branches, through the wells that water its roots and the winds that stir its leaves. Among those roots, 3 wells spring eternal. The well of Urd lies beneath the root that stretches toward Asgard, and beside its silver waters sit the 3 Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, who weave the fates of gods and mortals on their great loom. The threads they spin are made of moments and choices, of words spoken and words held back, of loves found and loves lost, and their patterns are so complex that even they do not always know what pictures their weaving will reveal. The well of Mimir lies beneath the root that reaches toward Jotunheim, and its waters hold all the wisdom of the world, all the knowledge that was, is, and shall be. The head of Mimir himself, severed but still living, guards this well and speaks prophecies to those brave enough to pay the price for wisdom. The water tastes like starlight and sounds like music, and one sip contains understanding deeper than any mortal mind can hold. The third well, Hvergelmir, bubbles beneath the root that stretches toward Niflheim, and from it flow all the rivers of all the worlds. Its waters are clear as crystal and cold as winter stars, and they carry within their flow the essence of beginning and ending, the salt of tears and the sweetness of joy, the bitter taste of wisdom and the gentle flavor of innocence. Up and down Yggdrasil's vast trunk runs Ratatoskr, the squirrel whose name means drill tooth, carrying messages between the eagle that perches in the highest branches and the dragon Nidhugr, who gnaws at the deepest roots. His words are seldom kind, for he delights in stirring discord, in carrying insults up and down, in keeping alive the ancient enmity between height and depth, between aspiration and dissolution. Yet even Ratatoskr serves a purpose in the great pattern, for his constant motion keeps the tree alive. His messages maintain the tension between opposites that prevents the cosmos from growing stagnant. He is the voice of change, the agent of necessary conflict, the reminder that even in paradise, growth requires a certain amount of creative friction. 4 great stags graze perpetually among the world tree's branches, their names Dian, Dvalin, Dunair, and Durathror. They feed upon Yggdrasil's leaves, and as they do, they spread the tree's essence throughout all the worlds. For where their hooves touch earth, new life springs up. Where their breath warms the air, hope takes root. Where their antlers catch the light, inspiration blooms in mortal hearts. These noble beasts are more than animals. They are living symbols of renewal, 4-legged prayers that walk between worlds, carrying blessings from the world tree's inexhaustible store of life and vitality. Their presence reminds all creatures that existence is not a burden to be endured, but a gift to be celebrated. Not a problem to be solved, but a dance to be danced with grace and gratitude. In the highest crown of Yggdrasil perches an eagle whose wings span the width of sky itself. This great bird sees all that happens in all the worlds, and his keen eyes miss nothing that passes beneath the vast umbrella of the world tree's branches. Between his eyes sits the hawk Vedrfolnir, whose sight is even keener, who watches the watchers and sees the spaces between seeing. At the tree's roots coils Nidhugr, the dragon whose name means malice striker, forever gnawing at the world tree's foundation. Yet his work is not destruction, but transformation, for as he chews the old roots, new ones grow to replace them, and the tree remains ever young, ever strong, ever reaching toward new possibilities. This is the eternal cycle at the heart of Norse cosmology, creation and dissolution, dancing their endless dance, each giving meaning to the other, each necessary for the continuation of existence itself. The dragon and the eagle, Root Gnawer and Sky Soarer, are not enemies but partners in the great work of keeping the cosmos alive and growing. Through all these realms and between all these creatures flows the endless circulation of story and song, of wisdom and wonder, of the dreams that rise from mortal hearts to touch the branches of the world tree, and the inspirations that fall like leaves from those branches to nourish mortal souls. Yggdrasil is more than the axis of the world. It is the world's memory and imagination made manifest, the living library where all tales are preserved and all possibilities remain forever open. And so the great tree stands, its roots drinking deep from wells of wisdom, its trunk rising through realm after realm of wonder, its crown touching the very foundations of eternity. In its shade, gods and mortals alike find rest. In its branches, the future and past sing their eternal duet. In its rustling leaves, every story whispers itself to sleep, and every dream prepares to wake into the golden light of new beginnings. Breathe deeply now, and let your spirit drift upward like morning mist rising from a still lake, carried on currents of ancient memory toward the golden halls of Asgard. Here, where the very air shimmers with divine essence, dwell the gods who shape the fate of worlds, beings of such power and complexity that they mirror the best and most troubled aspects of the mortal hearts that worship them. Yet they are not distant, these northern deities, but intimate as the wind on your face, as present as the beating of your own heart. At the heart of all stories stands Odin, the Allfather, whose name means fury and inspiration in equal measure. Picture him now as he wanders the paths between worlds, sometimes appearing as a tall figure cloaked in blue and gray, his wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his face to shadow the socket where his missing eye once gleamed. Two ravens, black as midnight, perch upon his shoulders, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, who fly each dawn to the farthest corners of all 9 realms and return by evening to whisper in his ears everything they have seen and heard. Feel the weight of wisdom that rests upon Odin's shoulders, earned not through birthright, but through sacrifice and seeking. He hung himself from the branches of Yggdrasil for 9 days and 9 nights, pierced by his own spear, neither eating nor drinking, until the secrets of the runes revealed themselves to him in a flash of understanding that illuminated the very foundations of reality. He traded his eye to the wise giant Mimir for a single drink from the well of wisdom, and now sees not with 2 eyes of flesh, but with 1 eye of spirit that penetrates to the heart of all mysteries. This is no tyrant god demanding worship through fear, but a seeker like yourself, eternally curious, forever questing for knowledge that might postpone the inevitable twilight of Ragnarok. In his 8-legged horse Sleipnir, born of Loki's shape-shifting, he possesses a steed that can gallop across the sky, through the realms of the dead, between the moments of time itself. His spear Gungnir never misses its target because it is aimed not just at what is, but at what must be. Beside him in the golden halls walks Frigg, his wife, the queen of Aesir, whose name means beloved, and whose wisdom runs as deep as underground rivers. She alone among the gods knows all fates, but speaks of them to none, holding in her heart the sorrows and joys to come with the patience of earth itself. Her spinning wheel turns endlessly, weaving clouds from silver thread, and where her tears fall, morning dew gathers to nourish the growing things of Midgard. Picture Frigg in her hall Fensalir, surrounded by her handmaidens who are themselves goddesses of various virtues, Fulla, who carries her casket of treasures, Gna, who rides the horse that gallops through air and over sea, Lofn, who smooths the path of love even when all seems hopeless. Here is divine feminine wisdom, not the fierce warrior goddess of some traditions, but the deep knowing of mothers and grandmothers, of those who nurture life and mourn its passing with equal grace. Their son Baldur shines brightest among all the gods. Beautiful beyond description, so radiant that light emanates from his very skin. His name means lord or prince, but his true nobility lies not in rank, but in the purity of his nature. He is beloved by all creation. Every stone and tree, every bird and beast would weep if harm came to him. Even his dreams are gentle things, filled with golden meadows and laughing streams, yet lately those dreams have turned dark with visions of his own death, shadows that no amount of love or light can dispel. In the same golden halls strides Thor, the thunder god, red-bearded and mighty, whose laughter shakes the rafters and whose temper flashes like the lightning he commands. His hammer Mjolnir, forged by dwarven smiths from the heart of a dying star, never fails to return to his hand no matter how far he hurls it. When storm clouds gather over Midgard, mortals know that Thor rides across the sky in his chariot, pulled by two great goats, Tangrisnir and Tangjoster, their hooves striking sparks from the clouds that become the lightning that illuminates the world below. Yet for all his fearsome power, Thor is the most human-hearted of the gods, quick to anger but quicker to forgive, devoted to protecting those who cannot protect themselves. He is the enemy of giants not from malice, but from duty, for he stands as the wall between the ordered world of gods and mortals and the chaotic forces that would unmake all careful constructions. His strength is not just physical but moral, the strength to do what must be done even when it brings no glory, even when it costs more than he wishes to pay. Feel the warmth of Thor's protection surrounding you like a father's embrace, like the walls of home that keep out the winter wind. In him, the divine becomes accessible, power wedded to love, might tempered with mercy. When children wake frightened from nightmares, their parents tell them that Thor's hammer guards their sleep. And in that telling, ancient truth finds new life in young hearts. Then there is Tyr, the one-handed god of war and justice, whose sacrifice teaches that sometimes the greatest victories require the greatest losses. When the gods needed to bind the wolf Fenrir, only Tyr was brave enough to place his hand in the beast's mouth as pledge of good faith. When the wolf realized he had been tricked and could not break free, he bit off Tyr's hand in payment for the deception. Yet Tyr bore this loss without complaint, knowing that individual suffering sometimes serves the greater good. See him now in the halls of Asgard, learning to write with his left hand, learning to embrace with one arm, learning that wholeness sometimes comes through acceptance of what has been lost rather than rage at what cannot be recovered. His courage is not the hot blood of battle fury, but the cold resolve of one who does what is right, regardless of personal cost. In the halls of healing dwells Air, the goddess whose very name means help or mercy, the divine physician whose knowledge of herbs and healing touch can cure any wound save those dealt by fate itself. Her hands glow with silver light as she tends the injured gods, and mortals who call upon her name in their hour of pain sometimes find that their suffering eases, their wounds close, their fever breaks like dawn, breaking over a troubled night. Through the golden corridors moves Heimdall, the white god, the watchman of the gods, whose dwelling Himinbjörg stands at the edge of Asgard, where the rainbow bridge touches the divine realm. His senses are so acute that he can hear grass growing in distant meadows, wool growing on distant sheep. He requires less sleep than a bird, and his eyes can pierce the darkness between worlds. When Ragnarok comes, his horn, Gjallarhorn, will sound the warning that will wake gods and giants to their final battle. Picture him standing eternal watch, patient as stone, yet alert as quicksilver, his eyes reflecting the colors of Bifrost as he scans all 9 realms for signs of threat or change. In his vigilance lies the safety of the ordered world, in his faithfulness the continuation of peace, however fragile and temporary that peace might be. The goddess Idun tends the orchard where golden apples grow, fruit that keeps the gods forever young, forever strong, forever beautiful. Without her care, without the magical nourishment of her harvest, even the immortal gods would age and wither like autumn leaves. She represents the eternal return of spring, the promise that what seems dead can bloom again, that what appears lost can be found, that what feels ended can begin anew. See her moving through her sacred grove, basket in hand, selecting only the ripest fruit, singing to the trees in a voice like running water, like wind in young leaves, like the first bird song of dawn. Her presence transforms any place into a garden, any season into spring, any sorrow into the possibility of future joy. Among the strangest and most complex of the divine family moves Loki, the shapeshifter, the silver-tongued one, whose words can charm birds from trees or kindle wars between the closest friends. He is both friend and enemy to the gods, the catalyst who makes stories possible, the wild card whose actions drive the great tales forward toward their inevitable conclusions. Without him, the cosmos would be static, perfect, perhaps, but sterile, lacking the creative tension that generates change and growth. His nature is contradiction itself, beautiful and terrible, helpful and harmful, creative and destructive. He has birthed monsters and marvels with equal ease, standing as both midwife and executioner to the gods' greatest triumphs and most terrible sorrows. Feel the energy that surrounds him like heat shimmering from summer pavement, the sense that in his presence anything might happen, any expectation might be overturned, any certainty might prove to be illusion. Yet even Loki serves the greater pattern, playing his part in the cosmic drama with a thoroughness that suggests he understands his role better than any. He is the shadow that gives meaning to light, the chaos that makes order precious, the question that forces truth to defend and define itself. The gods of Asgard are not alone in divine power, for bound to them by ancient treaties and mutual respect are the Vanir, the older gods of fertility and abundance. After a war that shook the foundations of both realms, peace was made through the exchange of hostages, and now wisdom flows between the two divine families like trade goods between allied kingdoms. Njordr of Noatun, god of the sea's bounty, whose very presence calms storms and fills fishing nets, now dwells among the Aesir. His feet are always damp with sea spray, his hair always tangled with salt and seaweed, his eyes always holding the depth and mystery of deep ocean. When he speaks, mortals hear the sound of waves on shingle, the cry of gulls over fishing boats, the songs that sailors sing to keep their courage up through long nights far from shore. His son, Freyr, rules over peace and plenty, the gentle increase of flocks and fields, the successful harvest and the profitable trade. His golden boar can run through air and water faster than any horse, and his ship can be folded up and carried in a pouch when not needed, yet when unfolded can carry all the gods at once. He gave away his sword for love, and now must face Ragnarok weaponless, trusting in the antler of a heart to serve him in the final battle. Feel the warmth of Freyr's blessing, like sunshine on your face, like the satisfaction of work well done, like the contentment of a full belly and a roof over your head. His gifts are simple but precious. Enough food for today, enough hope for tomorrow, enough love to make the space between today and tomorrow bearable, even beautiful. His sister Freya is perhaps the most beloved of all the goddesses, patroness of love and fertility, of the magic called Seder, that can see into hidden things and shape them according to will. Her beauty is so radiant that it outshines gold itself, and indeed, half of all warriors who die in battle come to her hall Sessrumnir, rather than to Odin's Valhalla. She weeps tears of red gold when her husband Odr wanders far from home, and those tears become amber when they touch earth or sea. Picture her falcon cloak that allows her to fly between the worlds faster than thought, her chariot drawn by two great cats who purr like thunder and whose eyes shine like green stars. She is desire itself made divine, the force that draws lover to beloved, that calls the bee to the flower, that awakens the earth from winter sleep with the promise of new life stirring beneath the soil. In her presence, the frozen heart remembers how to feel. The bitter mouth recalls the taste of sweetness. The closed hand opens to give and receive. She teaches that love is not weakness, but the strongest force in any realm, the power that can resurrect the dead and kindle stars in the darkness between worlds. Among the younger gods walks Baldur's brother Höder, the blind god whose affliction becomes both curse and gift. Unable to see with his eyes, he perceives with inner sight the true nature of things, the patterns that connect all life, the meanings that hide behind appearances. His darkness is not empty but full, pregnant with possibilities that sighted eyes cannot perceive. It will be his hand, guided by Loki's malice, that throws the mistletoe dart that pierces Baldur's heart and brings the age of innocence to its end. Yet even this terrible deed serves the greater pattern, for sometimes what seems most evil proves most necessary. Sometimes what appears as ending reveals itself as transformation. The goddess Sif, Thor's golden-haired wife, represents the beauty of the growing grain, her hair like wheat fields rippling in summer breeze. When Loki cut off her hair in mischief, the dwarves wove new tresses for her from spun gold finer than any earthly metal. And now her beauty is even greater than before, for it combines natural loveliness with divine artistry, the best of what grows wild with the finest that craft can create. Through these divine corridors also moves Vidar, the silent god, whose thick boot will one day step on the lower jaw of Fenrir the wolf and tear the beast apart, thus avenging his father Odin's death at Ragnarok. He speaks little because he sees much, and what he sees requires not words but preparation, not discussion, but readiness for the moment when action will be all that matters. The goddess Saga pours ale in her hall Sökkvabekkr, where she and Odin sit each day and drink from golden cups, while sharing stories of what was and what will be. Her name means she who sees, and in her hall all tales are preserved, all meanings made clear, all the connections between past and future revealed in their full complexity. Feel yourself joining this divine company, not as worshiper, but as part of the great story they enact. These gods are not perfect beings demanding adoration, but flawed personalities working out the implications of existence itself, learning through trial and error, love and loss, triumph and failure, what it means to be conscious in a universe that is both beautiful and terrible, meaningful and absurd, eternal and desperately fragile. In their stories, you find your own story reflected and illuminated. In their struggles with fate and freedom, duty and desire, wisdom and ignorance, you recognize the same struggles that play out in every mortal heart. They are what you might become if your virtues and vices were magnified to cosmic proportions, if your choices had consequences that rippled through all the worlds, if your loves and hates could literally reshape the foundations of reality. Yet for all their power, they too are bound by the threads that the Norns weave beside Yggdrasil's roots. They too must face the ending that comes to all things, the twilight that will dim even their divine radiance. In this shared mortality, this common subjection to fate's inexorable weaving, gods and mortals find their deepest kinship, their most profound understanding. Rest now in the presence of these ancient powers, feeling their stories settle around you like a warm cloak, their wisdom seeping into your dreams like rain into grateful earth. Let their voices join the chorus of wind and wave, star song and tree whisper, that will carry you gently into the realm where all stories are true and all dreams have power to heal and transform and make new. Let your spirit drift now like a feather on the wind, carried beyond the golden halls of Asgard and the peaceful meadows of Midgard, into the wilder spaces where creatures of legend make their homes. These are not the tame animals of barnyard and hearth, but beings woven from starlight and shadow, from frost and flame, from the dreams of sleeping mountains and the songs of ancient seas. Each one embodies some aspect of the cosmos made manifest, some truth too large for words alone to carry. In the deepest caverns beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, where the darkness is so complete it has weight and texture, dwells Nidhogr, the dragon whose name means curse striker or malice striker. Picture this great serpent, his scales black as the space between stars, each one inscribed with runes of ending and beginning. His eyes burn with cold fire, and his breath carries the scent of things long buried, of secrets hidden in the earth's deep places, of truths too terrible and wonderful for the surface world to bear. Day after day, night after night, Nidhogr gnaws at the roots of the world tree, his teeth strong enough to bite through the foundations of reality itself. Yet this is not destruction but renewal, for as he chews away the old, dead roots, new ones grow to take their place, stronger and more deeply anchored than those that came before. He is time made visible, change given form. The necessary force that prevents the cosmos from growing stagnant in its own perfection. Feel the rhythm of his gnawing like the pulse of your own heart, steady and inevitable, neither hurried nor slow. In his patient work lies a lesson for all who would understand the Norse way of seeing, that endings and beginnings are part of the same process, that what appears as destruction may be the necessary prelude to creation, that even the gods must submit to the cycles that govern all existence. Beside Nidhogr in the underworld coil other serpents, their names like incantations, Goin and Moin, Grabakr and Grafvaludr, Ofnir and Svafnir. They are the children of shadow and time, the serpents of dissolution that prepare the way for new growth. Yet they are not evil, any more than winter is evil for bringing an end to summer, any more than night is evil for following day. They are part of the great pattern, threads in the tapestry that the Norns weave beside the well of Urd. High in the crown of Yggdrasil, where the branches touch the very arch of heaven, perches the great eagle whose wings span the breadth of sky itself. This mighty bird sees all that passes in all the 9 realms, his keen eyes missing nothing, his sharp mind understanding the connections between events that seem unrelated to lesser sight. Between his eyes sits the hawk Vedrfolnir, whose name means storm pale or wind bleached, whose vision is even keener than the eagle's own. When the eagle spreads his wings, winds blow through all the worlds. When he calls, his voice carries across the void between stars. He represents aspiration, the upward reach of consciousness toward light and understanding, the eternal desire to rise above the limitations of earth and flesh and see with the clarity of divine vision. Up and down, the vast trunk of Yggdrasil scurries Ratatoskr, the squirrel whose name means drill tooth, carrying messages between the eagle above and the dragon below. His fur is silver gray as twilight, and his eyes sparkle with mischief and malice in equal measure. The words he carries are seldom kind, for he delights in stirring up discord, in keeping alive the ancient enmity between height and depth, between the urge to transcend and the need to remember our roots. Yet even Ratatoskr serves the greater pattern, for his constant motion keeps the world tree alive, prevents the divine and infernal from becoming too separated, maintains the creative tension that drives all stories forward. He is change itself, the restless energy that prevents any situation from becoming permanent, the voice that whispers, yes, but to every certainty, what if, to every assumption. Picture him now, racing up and down the cosmic tree with tireless energy, his tail a blur of silver motion, his chattering voice echoing through all the realms as he carries rumors and insults, challenges and contradictions, from the heights to the depths and back again. In his seemingly destructive activity lies a deeper wisdom, the understanding that perfect peace is perfect death, that friction is necessary for growth, that even paradise needs a serpent to keep it interesting. Among the roots of the world tree graze 4 great stags, their names musical as wind chimes, Dine, Dvalin, Dunair, and Durathror. Their antlers branch wide as small trees, crowned with points that catch starlight and hold it like dewdrops. They feed upon the tender shoots and green leaves of Yggdrasil, and where they step, new life springs up in their hoofprints. Their breath is warm as summer morning, their eyes deep as forest pools, their presence a blessing that spreads renewal wherever they wander. These are no ordinary deer, but embodiments of the seasons, of growth and change, of the endless cycle of death and rebirth that governs all living things. In spring, they are young and eager, racing through meadows bright with new flowers. In summer, they are strong and graceful, their antlers full-grown and magnificent. In autumn, they are wise and patient, knowing that winter comes but trusting in the promise of spring's return. In winter, they endure with quiet dignity, their bodies lean but their spirits unbroken. Feel their gentle presence around you now. Their soft breathing, the whisper of their hooves on forest loam, the sense of ancient wisdom carried in their steady gaze. They remind you that change is not loss, but transformation, that what seems to end is only resting before its next beginning, that life finds a way to persist even through the darkest seasons. In the halls of Asgard lives Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, swifter than thought, more sure-footed than hope itself. Born of Loki's strange shape-shifting when he took the form of a mare, Sleipnir can gallop across the sky, through the depths of the underworld, between the heartbeats of time itself. His hooves strike sparks from the clouds, and his mane flows like captured lightning as he carries the Allfather on journeys between the worlds. This magnificent steed represents the shamanic journey, the ability of consciousness to travel beyond the boundaries of ordinary experience, to visit realms that exist parallel to our own, yet remain invisible to everyday sight. When you dream of flying, when you feel your spirit soar beyond the confines of flesh and circumstance, you ride for a moment on Sleipnir's back, experiencing the freedom that comes when the soul remembers its divine nature. Picture yourself mounting this cosmic horse, feeling the warmth of his supernatural hide beneath you, the power of his stride as he launches into the space between worlds. There is no fear in this flight, only wonder, only the joy of movement unrestrained by gravity or logic, only the peace that comes when you surrender to forces greater and wiser than your individual will. The ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, perch always on Odin's shoulders, their black wings rustling with the sound of turning pages, their bright eyes holding reflections of all they have seen in their daily flights through the 9 realms. At dawn, they spread their wings and fly to the farthest reaches of existence, observing, remembering, understanding. At dusk, they return to whisper in the Allfather's ear everything they have witnessed. These are not mere birds, but aspects of consciousness itself, the twin powers that allow awareness to extend beyond the boundaries of the individual mind. Hugin represents active thinking, the analytical faculty that examines and categorizes experience. Munin embodies memory, the repository of all that has been learned, felt, suffered, and enjoyed. Together, they make wisdom possible, for wisdom is the marriage of present thinking with accumulated memory, the ability to see patterns across time and space. Feel them now as your own inner powers, the part of you that can think beyond the immediate moment, the part that remembers and learns from experience. Let them carry your consciousness beyond the boundaries of your body, beyond the walls of your room, into the vast spaces where stories are born and meaning takes wing. In the waters that surround Midgard swims Jörmungandr, the world serpent, so vast that he encircles the entire earth and grasps his own tail in his jaws. His coils lie along the ocean floor, creating the deep trenches and underwater mountains. His breathing causes the tides to rise and fall. His dreams stir up storms that can sink the mightiest ships. Yet for now, he sleeps in the depths. Dreaming serpent dreams of the time when he will rise from the ocean to join the final battle of Ragnarok. This great snake represents the boundary between order and chaos, the force that holds the world together through its very presence, while simultaneously threatening to destroy it should it ever fully wake. He is potential energy made manifest, power in check, the knowledge that beneath the surface of everyday life lie forces so vast they could reshape reality with a single movement. When you stand beside the sea and feel its immensity, when you sense the power that lies hidden beneath the waves, you touch the edge of Jörmungandr's dream. When you recognize that the same forces that nurture life can also overwhelm it, you begin to understand the serpent's wisdom, that existence always balances on the knife edge between creation and destruction, that life's intensity comes precisely from its precariousness. In the realm of the frost giants prowls Fenrir, the wolf whose name means one who dwells in the marshes, whose growth alarmed even the gods. As a pup, he played in the halls of Asgard, accepting food from Tyr's hand, trusting and trusted. But the Norns had prophesied that at Ragnarok he would devour Odin himself, and so the gods decided he must be bound before he reached his full terrible strength. 3 times they tried to chain him, and twice he broke free easily, his strength growing with each passing day. The third chain, Gleipnir, was made by the dark elves from impossible things: the sound of a cat's footfall, the breath of a fish, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the spittle of a bird, the beard of a woman. Thin as silk ribbon, yet unbreakable as fate itself, this chain could hold even Fenrir, but only through treachery. The wolf agreed to let them bind him only if one of the gods would place their hand in his mouth as a pledge of good faith. Only Tyr was brave enough to accept this bargain, and when Fenrir realized he could not break free, he bit off the war god's hand in payment for the deception. Now the wolf lies bound on a distant island, howling his rage across the 9 realms, awaiting the day when all bonds will break and he can claim his prophesied vengeance. Feel the tragedy in this tale, the way fear creates the very future it seeks to avoid. Fenrir was not evil by nature, but was made monstrous by the gods' terror of their own prophecies. His story teaches that sometimes our attempts to prevent disaster only ensure that it will come to pass, that trust broken cannot be mended, that betrayal plants seeds that will grow into the very destruction we hoped to avoid. Yet even in this darkness lies a deeper truth, that endings, however terrible, serve the greater pattern. Fenrir's rage will help fuel the flames of Ragnarok, But from those flames will come renewal, rebirth, the chance for the cycle to begin again with wisdom earned through suffering, hope tempered by loss. Loki's children embody the extremes of existence: Fenrir, the wolf of destruction; Jormungandr, the serpent of boundaries; and Hel, the goddess of death who rules the underworld realm that bears her name. Half living and half dead, beautiful and terrible, she welcomes all who die of sickness or old age into her vast hall, where they find peace and rest after the struggles of mortal life. Her realm is not a place of punishment, but of healing, where the wounds of life are finally allowed to close, where the weariness that accumulates through years of striving finally lifts from tired shoulders. The dead in her care dream gentle dreams and wake to days without ending, their hurts transformed into wisdom, their losses into deeper appreciation for what remains. Picture Hel's Hall as a place of twilight beauty, where soft lights glow without casting harsh shadows, where the temperature is always perfect, where the air carries the scent of flowers that bloom in no earthly garden. Here is rest for the weary, comfort for the afflicted, the peace that passes understanding for all who have completed their journey through the realm of the living. The Valkyries ride through the sky on their 8-legged horses, their armor shining like starlight, their weapons singing as they cleave the air. These battle maidens serve Odin, choosing which warriors will die in battle and which will live to fight another day. Those they select for death they carry to Valhalla, the hall of the slain, where they will feast and fight until Ragnarok calls them to the final battle. Yet the Valkyries are not merely collectors of the dead, but divine midwives who help heroes birth themselves into legend. Their presence on the battlefield transforms mere violence into sacred struggle, random death into meaningful sacrifice. They embody the Norse understanding that courage in the face of death is what makes life worth living, that the willingness to risk everything for honor creates the very values that make existence meaningful. See them now as they ride the night sky, their horses' hooves striking music from the aurora, their voices raised in songs that make the stars dance in their courses. They remind you that every ending is also a beginning, every death a doorway, every moment of courage a step toward immortality of a kind that transcends the mere continuation of breath and heartbeat. The dark elves labor in their underground forges, creating marvels that blur the line between craft and magic, between the possible and the impossible. From their workshops come treasures that embody abstract concepts made tangible. Odin's spear that never misses because it is aimed not just at what is, but at what must be. Thor's hammer that always returns because it carries with it the certainty of justice. Freya's ship that can be folded up and carried in a pocket because it exists as much in imagination as in physical space. These master craftsmen understand that the deepest magic lies not in violating natural law, but in so perfectly understanding it that one can work with forces others cannot even perceive. Their creations are not merely tools, but embodiments of principles, objects that carry within their substance the concentrated wisdom of ages. Picture their workshops carved from living crystal, where the walls themselves glow with gentle light, where the sound of hammer on anvil creates music more beautiful than any symphony. Here is work elevated to art, craft transformed into prayer, the marriage of skill and vision that creates objects worthy of gods. Through all these creatures and their stories runs the understanding that the Norse cosmos is alive at every level, that consciousness pervades existence from the smallest pebble to the greatest giant, from the briefest moment to the vastest age. Every being, no matter how strange or terrible, plays its part in the great pattern, contributes its voice to the cosmic symphony, adds its thread to the tapestry that the Norns weave beside Yggdrasil's roots. As you drift now toward sleep, feel yourself joining this vast community of existence, your own consciousness adding its note to the eternal song, your own story weaving itself into the pattern of legend and myth. In dreams, the boundaries between mortal and divine, between human and creature, between possible and impossible, become permeable, allowing you to experience the full richness of the Norse imagination. Let the creatures of legend gather around your bed like guardians, not frightening but comforting, reminders that you are never alone in the universe, that every story ever told is ultimately about the journey you yourself are taking from birth, through life to transformation, from sleeping to waking to sleeping again, from mortality to whatever lies beyond the reach of time and change. In the shifting twilight between day and night, between truth and falsehood, between order and chaos, walks a figure whose very presence transforms every story he enters. Loki, the shapeshifter, the silver-tongued one, whose name might mean fire or close or not. No one can say for certain, for like everything about him, even his name shifts and changes depending on who speaks it and when. He is perhaps the most complex of all the Norse gods, neither fully friend nor enemy, neither purely helpful nor purely harmful, but something more interesting and more human than either. He is necessary. Close your eyes and picture him as the ancient storytellers might have seen him in their mind's eye, tall and lean, with sharp features that seem to shift subtly as you watch, never quite the same from moment to moment. His hair might be red as fire, or black as shadow, or golden as autumn wheat, changing with his mood and purpose. His eyes dance with intelligence and mischief, holding secrets that might be gifts or might be curses, depending on how they're received. There is something magnetic about Loki, something that draws both gods and mortals into his orbit, despite the danger everyone knows he represents. He is wit incarnate, cleverness given form, the part of consciousness that asks, what if, when everyone else accepts what is. Without him, the cosmos would be static, perfect perhaps, but sterile, lacking the creative spark that drives all stories forward toward their destined conclusions. Feel his presence now not as threat, but as possibility, as the reminder that change, however uncomfortable, is the price of growth, that destruction and creation are often the same process viewed from different angles, that the trickster's apparent cruelty often serves a compassion too deep for conventional kindness to reach. In the early days of the world, when the gods were still learning how to be divine, Loki's cleverness saved Asgard more often than it endangered it. When the master builder came offering to construct walls around the divine realm in exchange for the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya as his payment, it was Loki who suggested the bargain that seemed to promise everything while delivering nothing. Let the builder have his price, but only if he could complete the work in a single winter, with no help save from his stallion. The gods laughed at this proposal, thinking it impossible, but as winter wore on and the walls rose with supernatural speed, their laughter turned to panic. The builder's horse, Svadilfari, proved stronger and more tireless than any earthly beast, hauling stones the size of houses as if they weighed no more than pebbles. With only 3 days remaining, and the wall nearly complete, the gods turned on Loki in fury, demanding he find a way out of the bargain he had encouraged them to make. Picture Loki in that moment, feeling the weight of divine anger and the pressure of impossible expectations. Lesser beings might have crumbled under such pressure, but the shapeshifter smiled that dangerous smile and walked out into the winter night, his form shifting and flowing like smoke in the wind. When dawn came, the builder's horse was gone, vanished as if it had never existed. In its place stood a mare of supernatural beauty, her coat gleaming silver in the morning light, her eyes holding depths that spoke of ancient wisdom and feminine mystery. All day she ran before Svadilfari, leading him away from his work, and though the stallion pursued her with desperate hunger, he could never quite catch her, never quite close the distance between desire and fulfillment. The builder, deprived of his supernatural aid, could not complete the wall in time. His rage, when he realized he had been tricked, was terrible to behold, so terrible that it revealed his true nature as a mountain giant, an enemy of the gods rather than their friend. Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, settled the matter with brutal finality, but the greater magic had already been worked by Loki's sacrifice. For 8 months, the mare that had been Loki remained in the wild, and when she returned to Asgard, she brought with her a foal unlike any creature ever seen, 8-legged Sleipnir, who would become Odin's mount. Capable of carrying the Allfather between the worlds faster than thought itself travels. In this story lies the essence of Loki's nature. He pays a price for his cleverness, transforms himself to serve the greater good, yet the results of his actions ripple out in ways no one could have predicted. Feel the complexity of this sacrifice, the way Loki gives of himself completely, accepting transformation and isolation to save his adopted family, yet receives little thanks for his service. In his willingness to become other than himself for the sake of others, he embodies a kind of love that is too strange and too costly for most hearts to comprehend. When the gods desired treasures to match their divine status, it was Loki who made them possible. The story begins with an act of mischief that seems pure cruelty. While Sif slept, he cut off her beautiful hair, perhaps from jealousy of her golden perfection, perhaps from simple destructive impulse, perhaps from some deeper understanding of the necessity of loss as prelude to greater gain. Thor's rage shook the halls of Asgard, and his threats promised Loki a death more painful than any previously imagined. To save himself, the trickster promised to journey to Svartalfheim, the realm of the dark elves, and commission new hair for Sif more beautiful than what had been lost. The elves spun gold into threads finer than spider silk, weaving tresses that would make Sif even more lovely than before, hair that would grow and change with the seasons, reflecting the eternal cycle of death and rebirth that governs all living things. But Loki's pride could not be satisfied with simple restoration. Challenging the greatest craftsmen in the 9 realms to create wonders that would surpass anything previously made, he set in motion a competition that would produce the most precious treasures of the Norse cosmos. The sons of Ivaldi created not only Sif's golden hair, but also Gungnir, Odin's spear that would never miss its target, and Skidbladnir, Freya's ship that could sail through air and water equally well and be folded up like cloth when not needed. Not to be outdone, the dwarven brothers Eitri and Broker crafted Gullinbursti, a golden boar for Freyr, whose bristles shone like the sun, Draupnir, a golden arm ring for Odin that would produce 8 identical rings every 9th night, and mighty Mjolnir, Thor's hammer that would never miss its mark and always return to his hand. Picture Loki in Svartalfheim, moving between workshops filled with wonders, his silver tongue weaving challenges and bargains, his shape-shifting nature allowing him to be whatever each craftsman needed him to be: patron, rival, muse, catalyst. The treasures that resulted from his meddling would become central to the god's power and identity, yet he receives no worship for his role in their creation, no thanks for his sacrificial cleverness. When Brokkr demanded to collect his wager, Loki's head, the trickster argued with lawyer-like precision that while he had bet his head, he had not bet his neck, and the two could not be separated without damaging both. Frustrated but bound by the letter of their agreement, Brokkr settled for sewing Loki's lips shut with magical thread, a punishment that silenced the silver tongue but could not still the shapeshifter's essential nature. Feel the pain and humiliation of this punishment, the way Loki bears it without complaint, understanding that his words, however clever, carry consequences that must be faced. When the thread finally dissolved and his voice returned, it carried new depth, new understanding of the weight that words can bear, the responsibility that comes with the power to change reality through speech. In the golden halls of Asgard, where the gods dwelt in splendor, there was one among them who shone brighter than all others. This was Balder, son of Odin the Allfather, and Frigg, the wise queen, and in all the 9 realms there was none so beloved. Balder was beautiful beyond words, with hair like spun sunlight and a face that radiated such pure joy that flowers bloomed where his footsteps fell. His very presence brought warmth to the coldest halls, and his laughter was like the sound of silver bells carried on a summer breeze. When he spoke, even the most quarrelsome gods fell silent to listen, for his words were honey and wisdom combined. The light that dwelt within Balder was not merely the glow of youth or beauty, but something deeper, a luminescence of the soul that touched all who looked upon him. Children would cease their crying when he passed by. Birds would sing sweeter songs in his presence. Even the stones of Asgard seemed to gleam more brightly when blessed by his shadow. All things loved Balder. The sun itself would linger longer in the sky when he walked beneath it, as if reluctant to set and leave him in darkness. The moon would cast gentler beams upon his chamber. The winds would whisper softer when they moved through his golden hair. He was joy incarnate, hope given form, the very spirit of light walking among gods and mortals alike. But even in paradise, shadows can fall. And it was in the depths of peaceful sleep that darkness first whispered its warning to the shining god. Night after night, Balder was visited by dreams unlike any he had known. These were not the gentle visions that usually graced his slumber, filled with meadows of eternal spring and halls of endless feast. Instead, he found himself wandering through landscapes of twilight and ash, where no bird sang and no flower bloomed. In these dreams, he felt a great weight pressing upon his chest, a coldness creeping through his limbs, and always, always, the sense that something precious was slipping away like water through cupped hands. He would wake with a start, his heart racing, the golden light within him flickering like a candle in a storm. The dreams came with such vivid clarity that he could taste the bitter ash on his tongue, feel the chill of death upon his skin. And though he was Balder the beautiful, Balder the beloved, he found himself afraid. When morning came, he would try to shake off these visions, to lose himself in the simple pleasures that had always brought him joy. He would walk through the gardens of Asgard, where every flower turned its face toward him like a devoted friend. He would sit by the well of wisdom, watching the ripples catch the light like scattered diamonds. He would listen to the songs of the skalds, those master storytellers who wove tales of wonder and adventure. Yet the dreams persisted, growing stronger with each passing night. In them, he saw himself lying still and cold, surrounded by grieving faces. He heard the sound of weeping, great sobs that shook the very foundations of the worlds. He felt himself sinking into darkness, leaving behind all the light and laughter that had defined his existence. Frigg, his mother, noticed the change in her beloved son. She who could see into the future with her gifts of prophecy, she who knew the threads of fate as they were woven, looked upon Baldur's troubled face and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the northern winds. In his eyes, she saw reflections of her own fears, the terrible knowledge that even gods must face their destiny. One morning, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Baldur came to his mother in her silver hall. His face was pale despite its usual radiance, and his hands trembled like leaves before a storm. He spoke of his dreams, of visions of death that came with such clarity that he could not doubt their truth. He had seen himself lifeless, and all the joy gone out of the world. Frigg felt her heart break at these words, though she had expected them, for she too had dreamed, and in her dreams she had seen the same terrible vision. She had seen her shining sun struck down, had felt the darkness that would follow his passing like winter, without end. But Frigg was not merely a mother grieving for her child. She was a goddess of great power, and she would not surrender to fate without a fight. She gathered him into her arms, as she had when he was but a child learning to walk among the stars, promising that dreams were but shadows of possibility that need not become truth if they had the will to change them. She vowed that no harm would come to him, that the light would not go out of the world. And so began Frigg's great quest to save her son from the doom that shadowed him. She knew that if Baldur was to die, it would be by some instrument of violence, some weapon or force that could pierce his divine nature. Therefore, she would remove all such threats from the world. She would take oaths from every created thing that they would never harm her beloved child. With the speed of thought, Frigg traveled throughout all the 9 realms. She spoke first to fire, that ancient force that had been present at the world's beginning, and it promised never to burn her son. She whispered to water, from the smallest raindrop to the mightiest ocean, and it swore never to drown him. She called to iron and steel, to every blade and spear that mortals and gods might wield, and they vowed never to cut him. On and on she went, taking oaths from stone and wood, from wind and storm, from every beast that walked or flew or swam. She spoke to poison and plague, to hunger and thirst, to all the forces that might bring harm to any living thing, and each in turn gave their solemn promise that they would never hurt Baldur the Beautiful. The gods of Asgard watched in amazement as Frigg's great work unfolded. They saw her travel to the darkest caves where dwelt the dragons, to the highest peaks where the eagles made their nests, to the deepest parts of the sea where ancient krakens slumbered. Nothing was too small or too mighty for her attention. Even the humble pebbles on the shore swore their oath. Even the gentlest breeze promised never to harm her son. When her work was done, Frigg returned to Asgard with a heart lightened by hope. She had spoken to all of creation, and all of creation had sworn to protect her child. Surely now the terrible dreams would cease. Surely now Baldur could walk in safety, his light undimmed by fear. To test the power of these oaths, the gods devised a game that soon became their favorite entertainment. They would gather in the great courtyard of Gladsheim, and one by one they would hurl weapons at Baldur. Spears would turn aside at the last moment. Arrows would fall harmlessly to the ground. Stones would crumble to dust before they could touch him. Even Thor's mighty hammer, when thrown in play, would veer away as if pushed by invisible hands. Balder would stand in the center of this storm of weapons, laughing with pure delight as nothing could harm him. His joy was infectious, spreading to all who watched. The gods would cheer and applaud as each missile failed to find its mark. They called it the greatest magic they had ever witnessed, this perfect protection that surrounded their beloved companion. The dreams that had tormented Balder began to fade, replaced once again by visions of light and hope. His radiance returned brighter than ever, as if the fear that had dimmed it had only served to make it burn more purely. He walked through Asgard with renewed confidence, knowing that nothing in all creation could bring him harm. But in the shadows at the edge of the courtyard, one figure did not join in the celebration. Loki, the shapeshifter, the trickster, the one who could never bear to see others completely happy, watched the games with narrowed eyes. His clever mind was already turning, seeking the flaw that must exist in even the most perfect protection. For Loki knew that nothing in all the worlds was ever quite complete, that there was always one small thread left unwoven in fate's tapestry. While the gods laughed and threw their harmless weapons, Loki slipped away. He had questions that needed answering, and he knew exactly who might provide them. In the form of an old woman, bent and harmless, he made his way to Frigg's hall, where the goddess sat spinning threads of silver light. Disguised as an ancient crone, Loki inquired about the wondrous protection surrounding Balder, praising Frigg's thoroughness while subtly probing for any weakness. Frigg, pleased to speak of her great work, confirmed that she had taken oaths from everything that existed. Yet in her pride, she mentioned one small oversight, a young plant called mistletoe that grew on the oak trees west of Valhalla. It had seemed so insignificant that she had not bothered to ask an oath from such a harmless thing. Mistletoe. The word fell into Loki's mind like a stone into still water, sending ripples of possibility spreading outward. Even as he continued praising Frigg's wisdom, part of his consciousness was already flying westward, seeking the oak groves she had mentioned. When he took his leave, Loki abandoned his disguise and traveled swiftly to the forests west of Valhalla. There, growing parasitically on the mighty oak trees, he found what he sought. Mistletoe, with its pale berries and curious leaves, so young that it had no roots of its own. Drawing its life from the ancient trees that hosted it. With careful hands, Loki harvested a branch of the mistletoe. It felt warm in his grasp, thrumming with potential. Such a small thing, hardly larger than an arrow, yet it possessed something that no weapon forged by gods or dwarves could claim: freedom from the oaths that protected Balder. But possessing the means was not enough. Loki was too cunning to act directly, too aware that suspicion would fall upon him if he were seen harming the beloved god. No, he needed another hand to guide the weapon, someone who could act without malice, without even understanding what they were doing. His gaze fell upon Hödur, Balder's own brother, who sat apart from the weapon-throwing games. Hödur was as different from Balder as night from day. Where Balder blazed with light, Hödur dwelt in perpetual darkness, for he had been born blind. Where Balder was surrounded always by friends and admirers, Hödur often sat alone, feeling isolated by his lack of sight. Yet despite these differences, or perhaps because of them, the bond between the brothers was strong. Hödur loved Balder with a fierce devotion, proud of his brother's glory even as it highlighted his own limitations. And Balder, for his part, was always gentle and patient with Hödur, describing in loving detail the sights his brother could not see, guiding his steps, including him in every celebration. Loki approached Hoder with the mistletoe concealed in his robes, his voice smooth and friendly, touched with just the right note of sympathetic concern. He inquired why Hoder sat apart from the games, whether he did not wish to honor Balder as the others did. Hoder expressed his desire to join them, but explained his limitations. He could not see to aim, and had no weapon to throw. What honor would there be in missing the mark entirely? Loki offered a solution, producing the mistletoe dart and volunteering to guide Hoder's aim. Hope kindled in the blind god's face, the same hope that had lit it countless times when Balder offered to share his sight through words. Loki pressed the mistletoe dart into Hoder's hand. To the blind god, it felt like any other projectile. Smooth wood, well balanced, perfectly weighted for throwing. He had no way of knowing that this simple branch held the power to pierce the protection that surrounded Balder like a second skin. Loki positioned Hoder carefully, guiding his arm as Balder's laughter rang out bright and musical above the cheers of the other gods. Hoder smiled at the sound, anticipating how pleased his brother would be to see him joining in the celebration. At Loki's whispered instruction, Hoder hurled the mistletoe dart toward the sound of his brother's voice with all the strength of his divine nature. Time seemed to slow as the small projectile flew through the air. The other gods, still laughing and calling out suggestions for the next weapon to test, did not immediately notice what was happening. They expected to see another harmless demonstration of Frigg's protective oaths, another spear or stone falling away before it could touch their shining companion. But the mistletoe dart did not turn aside. It did not crumble or veer away or lose its force. It flew straight and true, guided by love and thrown with divine strength, carrying with it the only power in all the worlds that could breach Balder's protection. It struck him in the chest, just above his heart, and the sound it made was not the clatter of deflected metal or the whisper of turned arrows. It was a soft, wet sound, the sound of wood piercing flesh, of mortality claiming immortality. Balder looked down at the small branch protruding from his chest, and his face showed not pain, but surprise, as if he could not quite understand what he was seeing. The light that had always blazed within him began to flicker, like a flame running short of oil. His knees buckled, and he sank gracefully to the ground, his golden hair spreading around him like a pool of sunlight. The laughter died in every throat. The very air seemed to hold its breath as the gods stared in horror at their fallen friend. In the space of a heartbeat, the world had changed beyond recognition. The light was going out, and darkness was creeping in at the edges of everything they held dear. Thor whispered Balder's name like a prayer, like a plea for this to be some elaborate jest. But Balder's eyes were growing dim, and when he tried to speak, only blood came from his lips. The mistletoe had done its work with terrible efficiency. The one thing in all creation that had not sworn to protect him had become the instrument of his doom. Hoder, still not understanding what had happened, called out joyfully, asking if he had hit the mark, if his dart had struck true. The silence that greeted his words was answer enough. Slowly, horribly, comprehension crept into his mind. The dart had struck true indeed, too true, too final. His hand, guided by love and trust, had dealt a blow that no force in the 9 realms could heal. And in that moment, watching Balder's light fade like sunset into eternal night, the gods knew that something fundamental had broken in the world. This was not merely the death of one among them, beloved though he was. This was the first crack in the foundation of everything they had built, the first note of the song that would one day become the symphony of Ragnarok. The age of endings had begun, and it had begun with love and trust and a simple branch of mistletoe guided by the most innocent of hands. The death of Baldur sent ripples through all the 9 realms like a stone cast into a still pond, but these were ripples of darkness that grew stronger rather than weaker as they spread. In that moment, when the shining god drew his last breath, when his light flickered and went out forever, something fundamental shifted in the very fabric of existence. The gods carried Baldur's body to the seashore, where his great ship Ringhorn waited. This was no ordinary vessel, but the largest ship ever built, its prow carved with dragons and its sides gleaming with silver and gold. Upon its deck, they built a funeral pyre worthy of the most beloved of all gods, heaping it high with treasures and precious things, with silks and furs and weapons of surpassing beauty. Frigg wept as she had never wept before, her tears falling like silver rain upon her son's still face. Each drop that touched the earth became a small flower, white and pure, that would bloom in sorrow for all time. The other gods stood in silence, their hearts heavy with a grief they had never imagined possible. Even the stones beneath their feet seemed to weep, growing slick with dew that tasted of salt and sadness. They tried to push the great ship out to sea, but their strength failed them. Grief had sapped their divine power, leaving them weak as mortal men. In the end, it was a giantess named Hyrrokin who came to their aid, riding on a wolf with serpents for reins. With a single mighty heave, she sent Ringhorn sliding into the waves, the force of her push so great that the earth shook and fire sparked from the rollers beneath the ship's hull. As the funeral pyre blazed upon the water, casting dancing shadows across the faces of the mourning gods, Odin leaned close to his son's ear and whispered words that none other could hear. Some say he spoke of love and loss, of the pride a father feels for a worthy son. Others believe he whispered secrets of the future, warnings of the dark days that were to come. But the wind carried his words away, and they were lost forever to the crackling of flames and the sighing of the sea. The fire burned through the night and into the next day, visible from every realm as a pillar of light that seemed to hold up the very sky. When at last it died to embers and the ship sank beneath the waves, the worlds felt emptier, colder, as if the sun itself had dimmed in sympathy for the fallen god. But grief was not the only consequence of Baldur's death. In the halls of Asgard, anger burned as hot as sorrow. The gods knew that this was no accident, no simple twist of fate. Someone had guided that mistletoe dart. Someone had sought out the one weakness in Frigg's careful protection. Their eyes turned to Loki, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the one who could never leave well enough alone. Loki felt their suspicion like a weight upon his shoulders, saw the accusations in their eyes even when no words were spoken. He tried to maintain his usual air of casual indifference, but there was something different in his manner now, a tension that had not been there before. The easy laughter was forced, the clever jests fell flat, and when he thought no one was looking, shadows seemed to gather around him like old friends welcoming him home. The confrontation came, as such things always do, when emotions could no longer be contained. In the great hall of Aegir, during a feast meant to honor the memory of the fallen god, Loki's tongue grew sharp with wine and bitterness. He spoke words that should not have been spoken, revealed truths that should have remained hidden, mocked the gods and their grief with a cruelty that surprised even himself. When he could no longer deny his part in Baldur's death, when the accusations flew like arrows and his guilt lay bare before them all, the gods' patience finally snapped. They seized him, this silver-tongued betrayer, This friend turned enemy, and they dragged him to a place deep beneath the earth where even his shape-shifting could not help him escape. There, in a cavern that had never known the touch of sun or star, they bound him with chains forged from the intestines of his own son, chains that burned his flesh like acid and held him fast no matter how he struggled. Above his face, they placed a serpent, a venomous creature whose fangs dripped poison that fell upon his skin drop by burning drop. Only Sigyn, his faithful wife, remained by his side in that place of torment. She held a bowl to catch the venom, but when it filled and she had to empty it, the drops would fall upon Loki's face, and his screams of agony would shake the very foundations of the earth. These were the earthquakes that mortals felt, the tremors that reminded all the worlds that the trickster god writhed in pain beneath their feet. But even as Loki suffered for his crimes, the true consequences of Baldur's death were only beginning to unfold. The balance that had held the worlds in harmony for countless ages had been shattered, and chaos began to seep through the cracks like water through a broken dam. The first sign was subtle, noticed only by those who watched the skies with careful eyes. The sun began to move differently in its course, sometimes racing ahead of its appointed time, sometimes lagging behind, as if reluctant to continue its eternal journey. The moon grew pale and fitful, hiding its face behind clouds that formed from nothing and vanished just as mysteriously. Seasons began to blur and merge. Spring came late and departed early. Summer burned with unnatural heat, withering crops and drying rivers to dust. Autumn brought storms that stripped the trees bare in a single night, leaving them standing like skeletons against the gray sky. And winter grew longer and more bitter with each passing year. But it was in the hearts and minds of mortals that the greatest changes were seen. The death of Baldur had been felt in Midgard as surely as in Asgard, for he had been the light that warmed all hearts, the hope that sustained all souls. With his passing, that warmth began to fade, and in its place crept coldness that had nothing to do with weather. Brother began to turn against brother, father against son, friend against friend. Trust became as rare as summer snow, and kindness was seen as weakness to be exploited. Wars broke out over scraps of land, over insults real and imagined, over grievances so old that none remembered their origin. The strong preyed upon the weak without mercy, and the weak dreamed only of growing strong enough to take revenge. In the forests, wolves grew bold and numerous, their howls echoing through the night like prophecies of doom. They no longer feared fire or steel, no longer fled from the approach of men. Instead, they watched with yellow eyes that seemed to hold intelligence and malice in equal measure, as if they were waiting for some signal that only they could hear. The very sky began to change color, growing darker during the day, as if the sun struggled to pierce a veil that grew thicker with each passing season. Stars flickered and went out one by one, leaving patches of absolute darkness in the heavens. Strange lights danced on the horizon, colors that had no names, hues that hurt the eye to look upon directly. Animals began to behave strangely, fleeing their traditional homes and gathering in unusual places. Birds fell silent or sang songs of such mournful beauty that those who heard them wept without knowing why. Fish swam in patterns that spelled out words in languages no living being could read. And the sea itself grew restless, sending waves to crash upon shores that had known peace for 1,000 years. Odin felt these changes more keenly than any other, for his ravens, Hugin and Munin, brought him news from every corner of the 9 realms. Each day they returned with darker tidings, reports of omens and portents that spoke of an end approaching on swift wings. The Allfather's one remaining eye grew haunted with visions of what was to come, and he spent long hours in his high seat, Lidskjalf, watching the worlds spiral toward their doom. The wise women, the Volur, began to speak in riddles and prophecies, their words heavy with foreboding. They spoke of a time when the bonds that held the great wolf Fenrir would snap like threads, when the serpent Jormungandr would rise from the depths to poison the sky with his breath, when the dead would walk again under the banner of Hel herself. 3 winters, they prophesied, 3 winters without end, when snow would pile upon snow and ice would claim even the warmest hearths. Fimbulwinter they called it, the mighty winter that would herald the final battle. During these dark months, the wolf Skull would finally catch the sun and devour it, plunging the world into darkness absolute. His brother Hati would seize the moon, and night would reign eternal over all the realms. Children born in this time came into the world marked by sorrow, their cries weak and their eyes old beyond their years. They seemed to carry within them the knowledge of endings, as if they had been sent not to begin new lives, but to witness the conclusion of all things. Mothers looked upon these strange offspring with love mixed with fear, knowing that they had brought forth not hope for the future, but mourning for what would soon be lost. The great tree, Yggdrasil itself, began to show signs of distress. Its leaves turned brown at the edges, despite the endless spring that should have kept them green. The springs at its roots ran sometimes clear, sometimes red as blood, and the creatures that dwelt within its branches grew restless and strange. The dragon Nidhugr gnawed more fiercely at the roots, as if sensing that his time to break free was drawing near. In Asgard, the rainbow bridge Bifrost flickered and wavered like a flame in the wind. Sometimes it appeared solid and bright, a highway of color spanning the void between worlds. But increasingly, it faded to transparency, and there were days when it vanished entirely, leaving the gods isolated in their golden realm, cut off from the worlds they had sworn to protect. The very air began to taste different, carrying on it the scent of endings. It was a smell like autumn leaves and cold iron, like the last breath of dying men and the first cry of newborn storms. Those with the gift of foresight found their dreams filled with images of fire and flood, of wolves running free through empty halls, of ships made from dead men's nails sailing toward a shore that burned with cold flame. And still the signs multiplied. The Gjallarhorn, that mighty instrument that Heimdall would one day blow to summon the gods to their final battle, was sometimes heard in the distance, its notes faint but unmistakable. Those who heard it felt their hearts grow heavy, for they knew it was not yet time for that last call, merely the echo of what was to come, the shadow of that final dawn cast backward through time. The Norns, those 3 sisters who wove the fates of gods and men, worked now with increasing urgency at their loom. Their threads grew darker, their patterns more chaotic, and sometimes they would pause in their work to weep, their tears falling like rain upon the cloth of destiny they wove. Even they, who had known from the beginning how all stories would end, seemed surprised by the swiftness with which the final chapters were being written. And in the depths of his underground prison, Loki felt these changes in his very bones. The poison that dripped upon his face burned not just with venom, but with the knowledge of what his betrayal had begun. Soon, he knew, the bonds that held him would weaken. Soon the earthquakes caused by his thrashing would crack the very foundations of the world. Soon, he would be free to lead the forces of chaos against the gods he had once called brothers. The age of heroes was ending, and the age of monsters had begun. The wolf and the serpent stirred in their bonds, sensing that their time of freedom approached. The dead grew restless in their halls, knowing that they would soon march again under strange banners. And high above it all, the skies grew darker, as if the very heavens were drawing breath before uttering their final word. All the signs pointed toward the same inevitable conclusion. Ragnarok was coming, the twilight of the gods, the final battle that would remake the world in fire and blood. And though the gods prepared as best they could, gathering their weapons and their warriors, deep in their hearts they knew that this was not a war they could win. For it had been written long ago in the very fabric of fate that all things must end, that even gods must yield to the turning of the great wheel. The death of Balder had set that wheel in motion, and now nothing could stop it from completing its final, terrible revolution. The final winter had stretched across the worlds like a shroud, 3 years of darkness and cold that seemed to have no end. Snow fell, not in gentle flakes, but in walls of white that buried whole forests, whole cities, whole realms beneath their weight. The sun had grown so pale, it might have been the ghost of its former self, offering no warmth, barely enough light to distinguish day from night. In this twilight world, the last signs appeared with terrible swiftness. The earth began to tremble not with Loki's torment alone, but with a deeper shaking, as if the very bones of creation were cracking under some immense strain. Mountains split and crumbled, their ancient stones crying out as they fell. The sea boiled and frothed, sending waves higher than any tower to crash against shores that had known peace since the world's beginning. And then, on a morning that was no different from the endless succession of gray dawns that had come before, the bonds began to break. Deep beneath the earth, in his prison of agony, Loki felt the chains that held him growing warm. The metal, forged from his own son's entrails and strengthened by divine will, began to soften like wax near flame. The earthquakes that his struggles had caused for so long had worked their slow magic, weakening not just the bonds, but the very foundations of his cell. With a sound like thunder rolled across the sky, the first chain snapped, then the second. And with each breaking link, Loki's laughter echoed through the cavern, not the light mirth of old, but something darker, edged with madness and long-nursed revenge. When the final bond parted, he rose to his full height for the first time in ages, his form rippling and changing as the shapeshifter within him rejoiced in its freedom. Sigyn, his faithful wife, who had held the bowl to catch the serpent's venom through all those years of suffering, looked upon her husband's face and saw there not the God she had loved, but something else entirely. The pain and humiliation had transformed him, burning away the last vestiges of the mischievous trickster and leaving only the bitter enemy of all that the gods held dear. But Loki was not the only ancient prisoner to taste freedom in those final days. Far to the north, in the ironwood Jarnvidr, the great wolf Fenrir felt his bonds of Gleipnir beginning to strain. That chain of impossibilities, forged from the sound of a cat's footfall and the roots of mountains, had held him fast since the gods' betrayal. But impossible things, it seemed, were not proof against the impossible times that had come upon the world. The wolf had grown during his captivity, fed on rage and the knowledge of betrayal until he was vast beyond imagining. His jaws could now encompass the width of sky. His breath was like the wind of winter itself. When at last the silken strong chain parted, his howl shattered the aurora and sent tremors through every realm. In the deepest parts of the ocean, Jormungandr, the world serpent, stirred in his coils around Midgard. For so long he had lain quiet on the seabed, his massive form encircling the world of men, his tail held fast in his own jaws. But now he began to uncoil, his movement causing tidal waves that swept away islands and turned coastal plains into watery graves. As the serpent rose from the depths, his breath preceded him, a poison so potent that it turned the very air green and made the sky weep tears of venom. Fish died in their millions, their silver bodies floating on waves that carried death to every shore. The smell of corruption spread across the waters, and sailors who breathed it found their lungs burning, their eyes streaming, their strength failing even as they struggled to reach land. From the realm of the dead came stirring of a different sort. Hel, daughter of Loki, ruler of those who died from sickness and age, felt the walls between the worlds growing thin. In her hall of shadows, the dishonored dead began to rise from their benches, their eyes gleaming with the pale fire of unlife. These were not the glorious slain who feasted in Valhalla, but the forgotten masses, those who had lived quiet lives and died quiet deaths, now awakened to play their part in the world's ending. At Hel's command, they began to build a ship unlike any that had ever sailed. Naglfar, they called it, the nail ship, constructed from the fingernails and toenails of the dead. It was a vessel of corruption and decay, yet it floated upon the poisoned waters as surely as any craft built by living hands. When completed, it would carry the army of the dishonored dead to their final battle. And what of the gods, as these ancient enemies stirred and gathered their strength? In Asgard, the golden halls echoed with the sound of preparation. Weapons were sharpened that had not been drawn in 1,000 years. Armor was donned that had hung unused since the last great war between Aesir and Vanir. The Einherjar, those honored warriors who had died gloriously in battle and been chosen by the Valkyries for Odin's hall, took up their arms with grim determination. Thor walked among them, his hammer Mjolnir crackling with lightning, thunder rolling in his wake. Yet even his mighty strength seemed somehow diminished, as if the approaching doom drained power from even the strongest of the gods. His beard was streaked with gray that had not been there before, and his eyes held the weight of prophecy, for he knew that this day would see his own ending as surely as any other's. Odin sat in his high seat Hlidskjalf, his ravens perched upon his shoulders, whispering news of the gathering storm. From his vantage point, he could see across all the 9 realms, could watch as his enemies assembled and his allies prepared for battle. The knowledge he had gained by hanging upon Yggdrasil, by sacrificing his eye for wisdom, now served only to show him how thorough would be the destruction to come. The Allfather rose and took up his spear Gungnir, that weapon which never missed its mark. Upon his 8-legged horse, Sleipnir, child of Loki's shape-shifting, he rode forth to gather his forces. But there was no joy in the muster, no songs of victory or boasts of glory. This was not a war to be won, but a fate to be faced with whatever courage remained to them. From across the rainbow bridge, Bifrost came the other gods, their faces set in grim resolve. Freyr arrived without his magic sword, having traded it long ago for love, and knowing that its absence would cost him dearly in the battle to come. Tyr came with his maimed hand, the price he had paid for binding Fenrir, a sacrifice that seemed now both heroic and futile. Vidar the Silent strode among them in his thick-soled boot, destined to survive what others would not, to walk in the world that would come after. Heimdall stood at his post on the bridge, his keen eyes searching the horizon for the first sign of the enemy host. His horn, the Gjallarhorn, hung at his side, waiting for the moment when its clarion call would summon all the gods to their final battle. the guardian of the bridge had seen much in his long watch, but nothing like what now approached across the darkened realms. The first to come into view was the ship Naglfar, sailing not upon water, but through the very air itself, its hull gleaming with the pale luminescence of decay. At its prow stood Hel, half beautiful woman, half rotting corpse, her divided face showing both sorrow and terrible resolve. Behind her ranked the armies of the dishonored dead, their forms wavering like smoke, their weapons gleaming with cold fire. From the north came Fenrir, bounding across the sky on legs that spanned valleys, his jaws agape and dripping with saliva that fell like rain upon the earth below. Where his feet touched the ground, the grass withered and the stones cracked. His howl shattered mountains and sent avalanches cascading into empty valleys. Jormungandr emerged from the poisoned sea, his coils rising like new mountain ranges, his head high as the clouds themselves. His breath turned the air green and thick, making it painful to breathe, burning the throats of gods and mortals alike. As he moved across the land, his massive body crushed forests and carved new rivers with its passing. And at the head of this terrible host came Loki, no longer the silver-tongued trickster, but transformed into something that had never been seen before. His form shifted and flowed like flame, sometimes appearing as the god he once was, sometimes as beast or monster or thing that had no name. Behind him marched the giants of Muspelheim, led by Surtur with his flaming sword, beings of primal fire who had waited since the world's beginning for this moment of ultimate destruction. The two armies met upon the field of Vigrid, a vast plain that stretched to every horizon, empty of all life save for the warriors who now filled it with the thunder of their approach. Here, in this place of final reckoning, the last battle would be fought. The battle that would determine not who would rule, but whether anything would remain to be ruled. Heimdall raised the Gjallarhorn to his lips and blew 3 mighty blasts that echoed across all the realms. The sound was like the voice of endings itself, a music both beautiful and terrible that marked the beginning of the final hour. At its call, the gods charged forward to meet their doom, their battle cries ringing out over the field like the last songs of a dying world. Odin rode straight toward Fenrir, the wolf whose binding he had ordered, whose hatred he had earned. The Allfather's spear flashed in the dim light as he sought to strike down the monster before those terrible jaws could close. But Fenrir was vast beyond measure, swift beyond hope, and hungry for the revenge he had dreamed of through long years of captivity. The great wolf's mouth opened wide, wide enough to swallow the sky itself, and Odin, father of gods, wielder of wisdom and war, disappeared into that darkness. Sleipnir screamed in anguish, but his rider was gone, devoured by the very creature they had once sought to tame. Vidar saw his father's fall and leaped forward with a cry that shook the battlefield. Upon his foot was the boot, made from all the leather scraps that had been discarded by cobblers since the world began, thick enough to wedge open even Fenrir's mighty jaws. With this, he pried apart the wolf's mouth, and with his hands he tore the great beast apart, avenging Odin's death even as the battle raged around them. Thor strode through the chaos toward Jormungandr, his hammer singing through the air with each mighty blow he struck. The world serpent reared up before him like a living mountain, its eyes burning with ancient malice. They had fought before, these two, in contests of strength and will. But this would be their final meeting. Mjolnir crashed against the serpent's skull with a sound like the world cracking. And the great beast reeled backward, its coils thrashing in mortal agony. But even as it died, Jörmungandr exhaled one last breath of poison, a cloud of venom so potent that not even Thor's divine strength could withstand it. The thunder god took 9 steps back from his fallen enemy, and then collapsed, the serpent's poison burning through his veins like liquid fire. Across the battlefield, Freyr faced Surtur, the fire giant whose blazing sword had waited since the dawn of time to burn the world to ashes. Without his magic weapon, traded away for love in happier days, Freyr fought with branch and stone, with desperate courage and failing strength. But mortal courage, however great, could not stand against primordial flame. Surtur's sword cut through the god's defenses like fire through dry grass, and another light went out of the world forever. Loki and Heimdall, old enemies bound by ancient grievances, circled each other like dancers in some terrible ballet. The guardian of Bifrost struck with sword and fury, while the trickster god shifted shape and form, now wolf, now flame, now something that had no shape at all. They fought with the intensity of those who knew that one way or another this would end their long enmity. And so it proved, for when the dust settled around their struggle, both lay still, each having delivered the blow that ended the other's existence. One by one, the great figures of mythology fell upon that field. Gods and giants, monsters and heroes, all played out their destined parts in the final drama. The sky grew darker as their lights were extinguished, and the very air grew thick with the weight of endings. But the battle was not finished, could not be finished, until the greatest ending of all came to pass. Surtur, victor over Freyr, lord of the fire giants, raised his blazing sword high above his head. The blade grew brighter and brighter until it seemed to capture the light of every star, the heat of every flame that had ever burned since the world began. With a cry that shattered the last mountains and boiled the last seas, Surtur brought down his sword upon the world itself. Fire erupted from every crack in the earth, flames that were not red or yellow, but colors that had no names. Fires that burned not just wood and stone, but time and memory and hope itself. The great tree Yggdrasil, anchor of all the realms, began to burn. Its leaves crackled and fell like flaming snow, and its branches, which had held up the sky since the beginning, groaned and twisted as the fire consumed them. The 3 wells at its roots boiled away to nothing, and the creatures that had dwelt within its bark fled screaming into the void. Asgard burned. The golden halls collapsed into glowing rubble, and the rainbow bridge melted like colored ice in summer. The well of wisdom became a pit of ash, and the throne of the gods crumbled to dust that was blown away by winds of flame. Midgard burned. The world of men disappeared beneath waves of fire that turned stone to liquid and metal to vapor. Every city, every forest, every mountain and valley vanished into the consuming heat, leaving nothing but an ocean of molten rock stretching to every horizon. All the 9 realms burned. Alfheim and Svartalfheim, Vanaheim and Jotunheim, even Hell's dark realm of the dead, all were consumed by flames that recognized no boundary, respected no power. The very concept of existence seemed to waver and fade as the fire ate everything that had ever been. And when there was nothing left to burn, when even the flames themselves began to flicker and die for want of fuel, the great wheel of creation came to a stop. The age of gods was over. The age of anything at all was over. In the silence that followed, broken only by the whisper of cooling ash, the worlds lay dead beneath a sky that held no stars. The ending was complete, the twilight absolute. Ragnarok had come at last, and nothing remained to mourn what had been lost. But even in endings there are beginnings. Even in the deepest darkness, light waits to be born again. For this was not just the end of one story, but the clearing of the stage for another tale entirely. A tale of renewal and rebirth that would spring from the ashes of the old world like flowers from soil made rich by fire. In the beginning, there was silence, not the comfortable quiet of a peaceful evening or the expectant hush before dawn, but the profound silence of endings, deep as the void between stars and complete as the sleep of stones. Where once 9 realms had teemed with life and light and laughter, now there was only emptiness, a darkness so absolute it seemed to have weight and substance of its own. The great fires had burned themselves to nothing, leaving behind not even ash to mark where worlds had been. The ocean of flame that had consumed everything had cooled and vanished, taking with it every trace of what had come before. No wind stirred, for there was nothing to move. No light shone, for there were no stars to give it. The wheel of time itself seemed to have stopped turning, as if the very concept of change had been forgotten. But in the deepest depths of that silence, something waited. It was not a thing that could be seen or touched, for it existed before sight and beyond substance. It was the memory of possibilities, the echo of what might be, the seed of all stories yet to come. Like the first word spoken in an empty hall, it carried within itself the power to fill the void with meaning once again. And slowly, so slowly, that eons might have passed unnoticed, that something began to stir. The first sign was water. From somewhere beyond the reach of understanding, drops began to fall into the emptiness, each one a tiny miracle of existence in a realm that had known only void. They fell without sound, for there was nothing to hear them, but each drop carried with it the essence of life itself, the potential for all that was to come. Drop by drop, these tears of creation began to pool, forming first a puddle, then a pond, then a lake that stretched beyond seeing. The water was not the blue of earthly seas, but a color that had no name. Clear as crystal, yet deep as eternity. It reflected nothing, for there was nothing to reflect, yet somehow it seemed to hold within its depths the possibility of all reflections that might ever be. As the water gathered and deepened, something else began to emerge from the darkness. It was light, but not the harsh brilliance of flame or the gentle glow of candle. This was the light of beginnings, soft and warm as a mother's touch, steady as the heartbeat of the earth. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once, seeping into the water like honey into milk, turning the colorless pool into something that shimmered with the promise of dawn. From this primordial sea, the first land began to rise, not thrust up by violence or carved by catastrophe, but emerging as naturally as breath from sleep, as flowers from soil made ready by time and rain. The earth was green from the moment it appeared, covered with grass so perfectly pure that each blade seemed cut from emerald and light. No barren stone or lifeless sand marred its surface, for this was a world born from hope itself. Trees began to grow, not saplings struggling toward maturity, but full-grown giants appearing as if they had always been there, merely waiting for the proper moment to reveal themselves. Their leaves whispered with voices like silver bells, speaking in languages that predated words, yet were understood by every living thing. Their roots drank deep of the shining water, and their branches reached toward a sky that had somehow found its way back to blue. But this new earth was not merely a garden of green and growing things. As the light strengthened and the world took shape, colors began to bloom like flowers in the morning. Red as the heart's blood, yellow as summer honey, purple as twilight dreams. orange as the laughter of children. They painted the landscape in hues that had never existed before, yet seemed as familiar as the colors of home. And with the colors came the sense of paradise. The air grew sweet with the fragrance of flowers that had no earthly names, spiced with the green smell of new leaves and the clean scent of water that had never known corruption. Each breath was a blessing, each breeze a promise that suffering belonged to yesterday and joy to all the morrows yet to come. It was into this perfect world that the first inhabitants began to return. From somewhere beyond the boundaries of the new earth, two figures approached, walking hand in hand across waters that bore them up as surely as solid ground. These were Leif and Lifthrasir, whose names meant life and life yearner, the two human souls who had somehow survived the universal burning by hiding within the world tree Yggdrasil itself. During the 3 years of Fimbulwinter and the final conflagration, they had sheltered within the heart of the great ash, sustained by nothing more than morning dew, yet untouched by flame or frost. They had slept through the ending of all things, and now they woke to find themselves the inheritors of paradise. Leif was fair as the dawn sky, her hair golden as wheat in summer, her eyes blue as the deepest ocean. She moved with the grace of wind through meadow grass, and when she spoke, her voice was like the song of streams running over smooth stones. In her hands, flowers bloomed at the touch, and her footsteps left behind them a trail of soft grass scattered with petals. Lifthrasir was strong as the roots of mountains, his hair dark as rich earth, his eyes green as the heart of forests. He walked with the steady strength of oak trees, and when he laughed, the sound was like distant thunder, promising rain to thirsty fields. Under his hands, seeds sprouted and grew, and wherever he rested, fruit trees sprang up to offer their bounty. Together, they explored their new world with wonder and delight. They found streams of water so pure it seemed to sing as it flowed, meadows where every grass blade caught and held the light like tiny prisms, forests where the trees grew in perfect harmony, and every path led to discoveries more beautiful than the last. This was the world as it was meant to be, unmarred by war or want, untouched by sorrow or strife. But they were not alone in this paradise. From the ruins of Asgard, where the golden halls had stood before the fire claimed them, came the sons of the fallen gods, those who had been destined to survive the ending and inherit what came after. Vidar the Silent walked first among them, his thick boot that had torn apart Fenrir's jaws, now just a memory of violence past. In this new world, his silence was not the quiet of grief, but the peace of deep contentment, the stillness of one who has found perfect rest. His eyes, which had seen the worst of endings, now reflected only the endless possibilities of beginnings. With him came Vali, son of Odin, no longer the young god driven by the need for vengeance, but a figure of wisdom and gentle strength. The rage that had once defined him had burned away in the great fire, leaving behind only the best parts of his divine nature. He walked through the new world like a shepherd tending beloved flocks, his presence a blessing wherever he went. Modi and Magni, the sons of Thor, carried with them their father's hammer Mjolnir, but it was transformed as everything else had been. No longer a weapon of war, it had become a tool of creation, its power now turned to building rather than breaking, to healing rather than harming. Where they struck the earth with it, springs of sweet water bubbled up, and orchards heavy with fruit appeared as if planted by divine gardeners. And from the halls of the dead came the most wonderful return of all. Balder the Beautiful, whose death had set in motion the events that led to Ragnarok. emerged from Hell's realm, transformed and renewed. His brother Hodr walked beside him, no longer blind, but seeing with eyes that sparkled with the joy of rediscovered sight. The darkness that had defined their tragedy was gone, replaced by a light that seemed to shine from within their very souls. Baldur's radiance was different now, not the desperate brightness of something trying to hold back the dark, but the steady glow of perfect peace. His smile could heal old wounds and mend broken hearts, and his laughter was like the sound of ice breaking in spring streams, promising that winter's grip was finally broken forever. Hodr gazed upon the world, with eyes wide with wonder, seeing for the first time the colors and shapes and beauty that his blindness had hidden from him before. Every sight was a revelation, every vista a gift beyond measure. He spoke in whispers of awe, afraid that too loud a voice might somehow break the spell of this perfect vision. Together, the survivors of Ragnarok began to build a new civilization, but it was unlike anything that had come before. There were no weapons in this world, for there was nothing to fight. There were no fortresses, for there was nothing to defend against. There were no kings or subjects, for all were equal in this paradise where want and need were forgotten concepts. Instead, they built halls of joy, places where music and laughter echoed under roofs that opened to let in the starlight. They planted gardens where every plant grew exactly as it chose, where chaos and order danced together in perfect harmony. They carved no monuments to war or conquest, but raised stones that sang with the wind and caught the light to throw rainbows across the morning sky. The sun that rose over this new world was different too. It was not the same orb that Skoll the wolf had devoured in the final days, but something altogether new, warmer and more gentle, casting a light that nourished rather than burned. It lingered long in the sky each day, as if reluctant to leave such beauty, and when it did set, it painted the heavens with colors that made the heart glad to see them. And the moon that followed was not cold and distant, but friendly and warm, smiling down on the sleeping earth like a benevolent grandmother watching over beloved children. Stars danced in its light, not the fixed points of the old heaven, but living sparks that moved in slow processions across the sky, telling stories of hope and wonder to those who watched from below. Animals began to appear in this new Eden, but they were not the beasts of the old world, red in tooth and claw. These creatures were gentle and wise, speaking in languages that all could understand, sharing the earth as friends rather than as hunter and hunted. Lions played with lambs, wolves ran with deer, and eagles nested beside doves in trees that sang lullabies to help them sleep. The very air seemed alive with possibilities. Each breath carried with it the scent of growing things and the promise of adventures yet to come. The wind brought messages of joy from distant places, and the rain that fell was warm and sweet, nourishing the earth without flood or storm. In this world, time moved differently, not in the harsh progression of seconds and minutes and years, but in the gentle rhythm of seasons that changed not because they must, but because they chose to, each one bringing its own gifts and beauties. Spring lasted as long as hearts desired to see things growing. Summer lingered while souls craved warmth and light. Autumn painted the world in glory for as long as eyes wished to see beauty. And winter was never cold or cruel, but restful and peaceful, a time for dreams and gentle sleep. The survivors found that they, too, were changed. The divine nature that had made them gods was still there, but purified and perfected. They could shape the world with their thoughts, call forth wonders with their words, heal with their touch, and bless with their presence. But these powers brought no temptation to dominate or control, for in paradise, the greatest joy came from serving and sharing rather than ruling and taking. They discovered that death, as they had known it, was no more, not because they could not die, but because the fear and finality that had defined death in the old world were gone. In this place, endings were just doorways to new beginnings, and what mortals had called death was revealed to be nothing more than a changing from one form of existence to another, as natural and gentle as the turning of seasons. Memory of the old world remained, but it was memory without pain. They could recall the battles and sorrows, the betrayals and tragedies, but these memories no longer had the power to wound. Instead, they served as reminders of how precious was this new gift they had been given. How beautiful was the world that had emerged from the ashes of the old. And in their hearts, they understood that this was not just a reward for surviving the ending, but a promise of what had always been possible. The old world had not been destroyed in punishment or anger, but cleared away like a gardener clearing weeds to make room for more beautiful flowers. Ragnarok had not been a failure of the divine plan, but its completion, the final chapter that made possible the first page of a better story. As they walked through their paradise, building their halls of joy and planting their gardens of wonder, the survivors of the twilight understood that they were not just living in a new world, but helping to create it with every choice they made, every word they spoke, every act of love and kindness and beauty. The great wheel had turned full circle from creation through destruction to creation again. But this time with the wisdom that comes from experience, the beauty that emerges from understanding, and the peace that follows the storm. The gods were dead, but divinity lived on in this perfect world where every moment was a gift and every breath a blessing. And somewhere in the gentle breeze that stirred the leaves of the singing trees, in the laughter of the streams that ran with liquid light, in the whispers of the grass that grew in carpets of living emerald, the old stories lived on. Not as history to be mourned, but as songs to be celebrated, tales of courage and love and sacrifice that had made possible this ultimate happy ending. The world had ended, and the world had begun again, and it was very good. And so the great wheel of the cosmos turned full circle, from the first emergence of fire and ice in Ginnungagap to the perfect paradise that rose from Ragnarok's ashes. The stories that began in the void between worlds had found their completion in a realm of endless light and peace. But even as this final chapter closed upon the gods and their destinies, their tales were just beginning their greatest journey of all. For stories, unlike the beings who live them, do not die when their time is done. Instead, they take wing like birds released from golden cages, soaring across the boundaries that separate one world from another, one age from the next. They plant themselves in the hearts of those who hear them, growing and flowering in ways their original tellers could never have imagined. The myths of the North, born in the long darkness of Scandinavian winters and nurtured by the light of summer nights that seemed to stretch toward eternity, carried within them truths that transcended their origins. Though the Vikings who first spoke these tales have long since joined their ancestors in whatever halls await beyond the grave, the wisdom they wove into their stories continues to speak across the centuries. In the saga of Odin, the seeker of knowledge who sacrificed his eye for wisdom and hung himself upon the world tree to gain understanding of the runes, we see reflected the eternal human hunger to comprehend the mysteries that surround us. His ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, remind us that wisdom comes not just from learning new things, but from remembering and reflecting upon what we have already experienced. The Allfather's willingness to sacrifice comfort for understanding speaks to something deep within the human spirit, the recognition that growth requires struggle, that the most valuable insights often come at the cost of innocence or ease. In a world that sometimes seems to offer quick answers to every question, Odin's patient pursuit of deeper truths reminds us that some knowledge cannot be rushed, some wisdom cannot be bought, only earned through dedication and sacrifice. Thor's journey through the myths teaches different lessons, equally profound. The thunder god's mighty hammer and his battles against the giants speak to the human need to protect what we hold dear, to stand firm against the forces that would bring chaos to our ordered lives. Yet Thor's greatest victories come not from his strength alone, but from his courage to face challenges that seem impossible, his refusal to surrender even when defeat appears certain. In the story of his fishing for Jormungandr, the world serpent, we see the eternal dance between order and chaos, the recognition that some battles must be fought again and again, not because we can win them permanently, but because the fighting itself is what defines who we are. Thor's willingness to face the serpent, knowing it would one day be his doom, speaks to the heroic choice to do what is right, regardless of personal cost. The complex figure of Loki, shapeshifter and trickster, friend and enemy, reveals perhaps the most uncomfortable truths of all. In his silver tongue and clever schemes, we recognize the power of intelligence unguided by wisdom, the danger of wit without empathy. His transformation from mischievous companion to bitter enemy traces the path by which good intentions can be corrupted, how the desire to be clever can become the need to be cruel. Yet Loki's role in bringing about Ragnarok was also necessary for the rebirth that followed. In this paradox, the Norse myths acknowledge something that simpler stories often ignore: that destruction and creation are partners in the cosmic dance, that sometimes the old must be cleared away completely before the new can take root. Loki's betrayal, terrible as it was, served a purpose larger than his own malice. The death of Baldur, beautiful and beloved, strikes at the heart of every parent's deepest fear, every friend's worst nightmare: the loss of innocence. The realization that love alone cannot protect those we hold dear from the cruelty of fate. The understanding that even the most perfect beings are vulnerable to the smallest, most overlooked threats. In Frigg's desperate attempt to save her son and the tragic oversight that doomed him, we see our own struggles to shield those we love from a world that seems determined to harm them. Yet Baldur's story does not end in darkness. His return in the reborn world speaks to hopes that transcend death itself, the promise that beauty and goodness, though they may be lost for a time, are not destroyed forever. In every spring that follows winter, in every dawn that follows night, in every smile that follows tears, Baldur's resurrection echoes through our lives. The great tree Yggdrasil, with its roots in the underworld and its branches supporting the heavens, offers perhaps the most enduring symbol of all. It reminds us that all existence is connected, that the choices we make ripple outward in ways we cannot foresee, affecting not just ourselves, but countless others we may never meet. The wells at its base, springs of wisdom and fate and sacred water, suggest that understanding comes from looking both deep within and far beyond ourselves. When Nidhogger gnaws at the tree's roots while the eagle perches in its crown, with the squirrel Ratatoskr carrying messages of discord between them, we see reflected the constant tension in our own lives between forces of creation and destruction. the way conflict and harmony exist side by side in every moment of existence. The concept of Ragnarok itself, the twilight of the gods, speaks to truths that every human heart recognizes. All things end. All golden ages fade. All heroes grow old and die. Every civilization, no matter how mighty, eventually crumbles into dust. The Norse acceptance of this reality, rather than trying to deny it or wish it away, represents a profound courage that still has much to teach us. But Ragnarok is not just about endings. It is about the promise that comes after endings, the hope that destruction clears the way for something better. In a world that often seems to be falling apart around us, where institutions crumble and certainties dissolve, the Norse vision reminds us that chaos can be the prelude to rebirth, that the darkest hour comes just before a dawn more beautiful than any that has come before. The survival of Leif and Lifthrasir, hidden in the heart of the world tree, speaks to the human capacity to endure even the most terrible catastrophes. In every generation that survives war, plague, or disaster, in every community that rebuilds after destruction, in every individual who finds the strength to begin again after losing everything, their story continues to unfold. The return of Balder and the reconciliation of Hödur speak to the possibility of healing even the deepest wounds, of forgiveness even for the most terrible hurts. In the reborn world, where former enemies become friends, where old griefs are transformed into new joys, we see a vision of what human relationships could become if we chose understanding over resentment, compassion over revenge. These stories have traveled far from their origins in the cold lands of the North. They have found new homes in the imaginations of people who have never seen the northern lights or felt the bite of Arctic wind. They have been retold in 1,000 different ways, adapted to new languages and new cultures, yet their essential truths remain unchanged. In the modern world, where technology has given us powers that would have seemed magical to our ancestors, the Norse myths remind us that having great power does not automatically make us wise or good. Thor's strength, Odin's knowledge, Freya's prosperity, all came with responsibilities and costs. The gods were not perfect beings to be worshipped blindly, but complex characters struggling with the same fundamental challenges that face us all: how to use power responsibly, how to balance competing desires, how to face an uncertain future with courage and grace. The Norse understanding that even gods could make mistakes, could be fooled or defeated or killed, offers a refreshing antidote to the perfectionist pressures of contemporary life. These were not stories about beings who never failed, but about the importance of continuing to strive despite failure, of getting up after being knocked down, of finding meaning and purpose even in the face of certain defeat. The warrior culture that created these myths valued courage above all other virtues, but theirs was not the simple bravery of those who expect to win. It was the deeper heroism of those who fight on despite knowing they are doomed, who choose to do what is right because it is right, not because it will bring reward. This concept of honor independent of outcomes speaks to something eternal in the human spirit. In our own time, when the future often seems uncertain and the old certainties no longer provide comfort, the Norse myths offer not false reassurance, but honest acknowledgement of life's difficulties coupled with examples of how to face them with dignity. They teach us that meaning comes not from avoiding struggle, but from how we choose to struggle, not from preventing endings, but from how we choose to meet them. The cyclical nature of Norse cosmology, with its eternal cycle of creation, destruction, and rebirth, offers a perspective on change that can be deeply comforting. In a world where everything seems to be accelerating, where technologies and societies transform faster than we can adapt to them, the Norse vision reminds us that change itself is the one constant, that adaptation and resilience are the keys to survival. The new world that emerges after Ragnarok is not identical to the old, but represents its perfection, its potential finally fulfilled. This suggests that our own struggles and sufferings are not meaningless, that they serve a purpose in bringing about something better than what came before. The difficulties we face today may be the labor pains of a tomorrow more beautiful than we can imagine. As these ancient stories continue their journey through time, they carry within them the accumulated wisdom of all who have told and heard them. Each generation adds something new to their understanding, finds fresh meanings in old symbols, discovers contemporary relevance in ancient truths. The myths evolve as they travel, like rivers picking up new streams along their course, yet their essential nature remains unchanged. The Norse gods live on not in Asgard, but in the human heart, in every act of courage that defies impossible odds, in every sacrifice made for the sake of wisdom, in every moment of laughter that drives back the darkness. Their stories remind us that we too are part of something larger than ourselves, that our choices matter not just to us, but to the great story that humanity is writing together across the centuries. And in the quiet moments when the day's work is done and the night settles softly around us, when the mind begins to drift toward sleep and dreams, these old tales come to us like gentle companions, offering their comfort and wisdom. They speak of a time when the world was young and magic walked openly upon the earth, when gods and giants and mortals shared the same sky and breathed the same air. They remind us that we are the inheritors of countless generations of storytellers, that we carry within us the dreams and hopes and fears of all who came before. In every sunset that paints the sky with gold and crimson, we see the echo of Surtur's flames remaking the world. In every sunrise that brings new light to banish the darkness, we witness Baldur's return to the reborn earth. The snow that falls in winter carries whispers of Fimbulwinter, while the flowers of spring sing of Leaf and Lifthrasir, walking in their perfect garden. The thunder that rolls across summer skies echoes with the voice of Thor, and the wind that stirs the leaves speaks in the ancient tongue of Odin's ravens. These stories live in the turning of the seasons, in the cycle of sleeping and waking, in the rhythm of breathing that carries us through each day and into each night. They are woven into the very fabric of existence, threads in the great tapestry that connects all things across time and space. As you drift now toward sleep, carried on the gentle currents of approaching dreams, let these ancient voices accompany you into the realm where all stories meet and mingle. Let the wisdom of the north wind sing you to rest. Let the courage of heroes guard your slumber. Let the promise of rebirth that follows every ending fill your dreams with hope. For in the end, that is what these stories offer. Not escape from the world, but deeper engagement with it. Not false comfort, but true courage. Not easy answers, but better questions. They teach us that every ending is also a beginning, that every sleep promises a waking, that every night gives way to dawn. The gods of Asgard have passed into legend, but their legacy lives on in every heart that chooses hope over despair, courage over cowardice, wisdom over ignorance. Their stories continue to unfold, not in distant halls of gold and silver, but in the daily choices we make, the love we give, the beauty we create, the truth we seek. And so the wheel turns, as it always has and always will, carrying us forward into whatever comes next with the accumulated wisdom of all who have made this journey before us. The twilight of the gods becomes the dawn of something new, and the great story continues, world without end, forever and ever, until the last star burns out and the final tale is told. Sleep now and dream of worlds reborn in beauty, of heroes who never truly die, of stories that echo through eternity like songs that never end. And now, dear traveler, our journey through the realms of Norse mythology draws to its gentle close. Like the heroes of old returning home after their great adventures, we too must find our way back from the golden halls of Asgard, from the vast expanse of Vigrid where gods and giants met their fate, from the perfect gardens where Balder walks once more in eternal light. The stories we have shared tonight are older than the oldest stones, yet they speak to truths as fresh as tomorrow's dawn. They have traveled with us through ice and fire, through the darkest depths of hell and the brightest heights of divine glory. They have shown us worlds ending and beginning, heroes falling and rising, love conquering even death itself. As these ancient voices fade into whisper and memory, let them carry you gently toward the realm of sleep, that mysterious country where all souls journey each night to find their rest and renewal. Like Odin riding Sleipnir across the bridge between worlds, let your consciousness drift peacefully from waking into dreaming, from the solid earth of day into the floating realm of night. The northern lights that once danced above the Viking longships now dance above your dreams, painting the sky of sleep with colors that have no earthly names. The gentle winds that stirred the leaves of Yggdrasil now stir the curtains of your rest, bringing with them the scent of eternal spring and the promise of perfect peace. In your dreams tonight, you might find yourself walking through Folkvanger's golden halls, or sailing with the gods across the wine-dark sea toward shores of endless light. You might hear the songs of skalds telling tales of courage and wonder, or feel the warm sun of the reborn world touching your face with blessing. Let the courage of Thor guard your slumber, protecting you from every shadow that might disturb your rest. Let the wisdom of Odin guide your dreams toward visions of beauty and hope. Let the gentle light of Balder illuminate your sleep with the radiance of perfect peace. Let the steadfast love of Frigg wrap around you like the softest blanket, keeping you safe and warm through all the hours of darkness. The great wheel of time turns slowly toward morning, carrying you through the gentle rhythm of sleep toward the promise of another day. But for now, there is no urgency, no haste, only the sweet surrender to rest that waits to embrace you like an old friend welcoming you home. The wolves Skal and Hati have made their peace with sun and moon, and in the reborn world, day and night dance together in perfect harmony. The long winter is over. The spring has come at last. The flowers bloom eternal in gardens where sorrow is forgotten, and joy flows like living water from deep wells of contentment. Let your breathing slow and deepen, matching the gentle rhythm of waves upon the shore of some distant sea, where the water is always warm and the tide always peaceful. Each breath carries you further from the concerns of waking life, deeper into the sanctuary of sleep, where healing happens and dreams are born. The stars that shine above you tonight are the same stars that guided the Viking ships across uncharted seas, the same lights that witnessed the first stirrings of creation in the void of Ginnungagap. They hold within their ancient fire all the stories that have ever been told, all the dreams that have ever been dreamed, all the hopes that have ever lifted human hearts toward something greater than themselves. You are part of that great continuing story now, a thread in the vast tapestry that connects all souls across time and space. Your rest tonight is sacred, your dreams a gift, your peace a blessing that ripples outward to touch lives you may never know. Sleep comes now like a gentle tide, lifting you from the shores of consciousness and carrying you toward the deep waters of true rest. There is nothing to fear, nothing to resist, only the natural flow from day into night, from thinking into dreaming, from effort into ease. The halls of Asgard grow quiet as their golden doors close softly behind our departing footsteps. The rainbow bridge fades into the mists of memory. The great tree Yggdrasil settles into its eternal stillness, its leaves whispering lullabies in the ancient tongue of wind and time. The gods have found their peace at last, and so shall you. The stories have reached their perfect ending, and so shall your day. The long journey through myth and legend has brought us safely home to the harbor of sleep, where all voyagers find their rest. Let the darkness be your friend tonight, a velvet blanket studded with the diamonds of dreams. Let silence be your companion, the deep quiet that holds all possibilities. Let stillness be your teacher, showing you the art of perfect rest. The northern winds carry blessings from distant shores, where ice and fire dance together in the aurora's light. They whisper of worlds beyond imagination, of heroes who never die, of love that conquers every ending. They sing of the eternal cycle that carries all souls from darkness into light, from sleep into waking, from ending into beginning. Your eyelids grow heavy now, weighted with the sweetness of approaching sleep. Your body sinks deeper into comfort, supported by the loving embrace of rest. Your mind releases its hold on the day's concerns, letting them drift away like autumn leaves on a gentle stream. The threshold between waking and sleeping grows thin as silk, and you cross it now without effort, without thought, carried by the ancient rhythm that has blessed human rest since time began. You are safe in the arms of night, protected by the guardians of dream, welcomed into the eternal sanctuary of sleep. And so our tale ends as all the best stories do, not with finality, but with the promise of continuation. Not with goodbye, but with until we meet again. The myths of the North will wait for you in the realm of memory, ready to unfold their treasures whenever you call upon them. The gods and heroes will stand ready to accompany you on whatever journeys await. But for now, there is only this, the perfect peace of deep sleep, the healing darkness of absolute rest, the gentle drift into dreams where all stories become one story, where all voices join in the eternal song of being. Sleep well, dream beautifully, and wake tomorrow refreshed and renewed, carrying within you the strength of Thor, the wisdom of Odin, the beauty of Balder, and the enduring promise that every ending is also a beginning. The night is yours. The dreams are yours. The peace is yours. Sweet dreams, dear friend. Sweet dreams.